Okay. I think you got us set up. I think I'm doing good right now. I hope I'm doing good. 𝕵𝖎𝖙, nice to see you. First again. I know we're a little early today, and I want to give people a little time to kind of shuffle in. Today will be messy, but we're gonna do it, gang, because I think that we got some great content. It's just gonna be a little sloppy, for lack of a better term. I saw that the Lex Friedman debate dropped today. The one he hosted between Destiny, Finkelstein, and two other people I don't give a shit about. I mostly wanted to see the Destiny and Finkelstein debate. I have not watched it yet. I've seen clips. I've seen people comment on it, but I wanted to at least try to kind of go through it with you guys today, until I can't anymore, until I literally cannot physically stand it, or until 6:30 comes around, because at 6:30 I am going to be co-hosting with Brianna Wu on her new show, Counterfire. She needed someone to fill in, and so I figured, you know what, I'll go fill in for her, and we'll see how that goes, right? So if anyone's wondering, hey, why aren't you streaming on Twitch today? Are you doing a bit, Zephyr? Is this what's going on? You're doing a bit? Is this the slow talking that I've been warned about? Yeah. I've heard people give me warning about that, right? That this was a thing that was going to occur. We'll see though, right? We'll see. I know I'm earlier than usual. I don't know how this will go. We're gonna give it our best try, because we're good triers, and we'll see. I have alternative things to talk about if this ends up being a bust. If it ends up that I cannot stomach the sound of any of their voices, or if it turns out that it's just boring, I will switch to something else. I will probably watch it at some point just for my own edification. But yeah, that's what we're doing. But yeah, anyway, I'm going to give everyone a few minutes because I know I'm going live early. And I know that I usually don't go live for another 30 minutes. So I'm going to give everyone a chance to kind of shuffle on board. And we'll see. Hold on, let me put out my announcements. Bloop, 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 bloop. How's everyone doing today? Zephyr, how are you? What time am I going on Counterfire? 6:30 apparently. Do I know what it's about? No. Do I know what we'll talk about? No. But we'll find out when we get there, gang. Okay? That's what will happen. Give me 1 second. You know, I could probably talk to Sansol today, too, since I'm not on Twitch. I don't normally get to talk to Sansol. I would like to talk to Sansol. I like Sansol for the most part. He's a good guy. I wonder what he's doing. I don't even know. Give me 1 second. Like I said, I'm just trying to make sure that everyone knows I'm live early. Give me one moment, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen. Today's counter is fire. They call it counterfeit. Maybe. This may be true. Rambling aside, let's get down to business, gang. Let's watch a show. Okay. You guys ready to try this out? I'm ready to try this out. Let's switch up my little view screen here. Everyone can see it. I got me in the corner there looking all nice. I look like I'm in this guy's stomach, right? I don't want to cover up his face. Right here. Let's adjust it. And hopefully when I play it, you guys can hear it. If the sound is off or the audio is not good, please let me know and I will adjust it when I can. Yeah, are we ready? Are we ready to go through this? Are we ready to get started, gang? We're going to go through the intro, and then I've been given a timestamp of quote unquote when it gets good. And so we're going to fast forward a little bit and see what they have to say. Once again, this is Finkelstein versus Destiny. It's 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙 and Benny Morris are also there, but I'm mostly looking forward to seeing what Destiny and Finkelstein's interactions are like. That is what I want to watch. That's what I'm curious about. And I guess we'll just get right into it. Without further ado, let's start this shit show.
That's a good point. No, it's a good point.
Now, some people accuse me of speaking very slowly, and they're advised on YouTube to turn up the speed 2 to 3 times whenever I'm on. One of the reasons I speak slowly is because I attach value to every word I say.
Norm will say this all over and over and over again. I only deal in facts. I don't deal in hypotheticals. I only deal in facts. I only deal in facts. And that seems to be the case, except for when the facts are completely and totally contrary to the particular point you're trying to push. The idea that Jews would have out of hand rejected any state that had Arabs on it or always had a plan of expulsion is just betrayed by the acceptance of the 47 partition
I don't
plan.
think you understand politics.
They forced the British to prevent emigration of Jews from Europe and reaching safe shores in Palestine. That's what they did.
And
they knew that the Jews were being persecuted in Europe.
Was Palestine the only spot of land on earth?
Yes, basically that was the problem. The Jews couldn't emigrate anywhere else.
What about your great friends in Britain, the architects of the Balfour Declaration?
By the late 1930s,
what about the United States?
They weren't happy to take in Jews, and the Americans weren't happy to take in Jews.
Okay, just from this introduction, I don't know how much of this we're going to go through. Just from this introduction. Gang, I don't know what to tell you, right? So Finkelstein talking about how he speaks solely because he put value on every single word he says. Fair enough, but I think it's also useful to value your audience's time, to value their sanity in a way. Now, I think sometimes that we can speak too fast, that people go through these things too fast, that they have too short of an attention span, the Zoomer generation, if you will. I'll give you guys that. That absolutely happens. That's absolutely a thing. But that is no excuse to talk like you are in an iceberg full of frozen jello. Right? Now, look. On occasion, I'll pause. I'll take my time. I'll think about what I want to say. I'll be very, very particular. If that happens on occasion, that is one thing. But if that is a habit, that's annoying. There's nothing morally wrong with it. It's just annoying. I guess we'll have to see how it goes. Really hard to comment on some of the arguments being made without knowing the context of the arguments. But let's get through the opening, and then we'll fast forward to the timestamps here and see what happens. So let's keep going.
And why are Palestinians who were not Europeans, who had zero role in the rise of Nazism, who had no relation to any of this, why are they somehow uniquely responsible for what happened in Europe and uniquely
to close the only safe haven for Jews?
Professor Morris, because of your logic, and I'm not disputing it, that's why October 7th happened.
Oh my God.
Because there was no options left for those people.
The Hamas guys who attacked the kibbutzim, apart from the attacks on the military sites, when they attacked the kibbutzim, were out to kill civilians, and they killed family after family, house after house.
Talk fast, so people think that you're coherent.
I'm just reading from the UN.
Yeah, but
I know you like them sometimes, only when they agree with you, though. But you've lied about this particular instance in the past. Those kids weren't just on the beaches as often stated in articles. Those kids were literally...
Okay, yeah, I don't know about this one, gang. I don't know about this one. Is Finkelstein in this debate going to try to justify what happened on October 7th? Please tell me he's not. Please tell me he's not going to go and make defense of the destruction and killing of civilians. Please tell me that isn't what's going to happen, because then it won't be just a funny, oh, look at the funny fast man talk and look at the funny slow man talk. Then I'm going to get up in my feelings about this. Then I'm going to have some serious issues. I guess we'll find out. Let's continue.
literally coming out of a previously identified Hamas compound
yeah,
that they
well,
have
the
operated
soccer
from.
ball.
They literally
Mr.
you can Google it.
Borelli,
You can
Mr.
Google it.
Borelli, with all
Mr.
due respect, with all due respect, you're such a fantastic moron. It's terrifying.
All right, guys. So this is the easy ritual that's helped my
Such a
grandma
fantastic
drop close
moron.
to 72
This is
pounds.
just a. Okay, so we got through the intro. What do you guys think so far? What do you guys think so far? It looks like they got into it. It looks like they got into a little bit of a scuffle, at least. So if you guys like blood sports, there might be some in there. We'll see. What do you guys think? I'm still not sure if I should be reviewing this, gang. Like, I don't like reviewing content, first of all. It's not my style. And second of all, oh, man, I don't know if this lends itself to easily digestible commentary. Very boring intro, but I want to see more. Okay. Vanessa for Truth, thanks for being here. Third Rail with Omar says, what's the Brianna Wu show about? I'm not exactly sure, but I was asked to be a co-host. I think we're going to be talking about the TikTok stuff, and I think we're going to be talking about some tweets that people have been made. We're going to go through it. Again, I'm a guest host. It's a last-minute thing, so at 6:30 we're going to go on, and we're just going to, I'm going to pretend to be Counterpoints, right? And I look enough like him, right, with the bald head and the beard. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. Zephyr Hash says, "Oh my God, get on the program, Wick. YouTube Premium #1 subscription service." Look, I'm not a rich man, and one of the reasons that I'm able to live off the YouTube and others premium service, or not premium service. I'm sorry. One of the reasons that this job is able to sustain me is because I don't do things like buy YouTube Premium and things like that. I live frugally within my means, if you will. Chara Asianable says, I'm not really entertained by any of this talk anymore because everyone keeps saying the same things over and over and over and over, and there's no changing people's minds. Welcome to debate, right? This is just how it is. I am curious to see what the arguments are. I don't know if it will be substantively different. Let me pull up the time stamp that I was told where they start talking about October 7th, and apparently it gets good then. So give me a second. Let me pull up the timestamp. I have it listed. Someone sent it to me. Okay. $5 from Zephyr Hash. To be honest, Wick, the debate is 5 hours long. They don't get into interesting stuff till 30 minutes in. React to Gangnam Style instead. Maybe. Oh, here we go. October 7th. They partition it out. Let's go to there. Let's listen to what they have to say. And let's get through this. You guys ready? Let's try it.
Facts.
Let's move to the modern day, and we'll return to history, maybe 67 and other important moments. But let's look to today, in the recent months, October 7th. Let me ask sort of a pointed question. Was October 7th attacks by Hamas on Israel genocidal? Was it an act of ethnic cleansing? Just so we lay out the moral calculus that we are engaged in. Maybe it was...
I don't like that question. I don't. And I'll tell you why. Whether or not it would be considered technically genocidal or ethnic cleansing is almost beside the point to me. I don't really care too much the technical label on what you give it. I'm more concerned about, and a better question, maybe he gets to this, is if we're going to ask a pointed question of these people, the question would be, was the October 7th attacks by Hamas justifiable? If so, how and in what ways? Just directly ask them, directly challenge them. Now, most people on these types of shows will say something like, no, I'm not justifying it, but. They won't come out and say they're directly justifying it. They'll be like, no, I'm not justifying it. I'm not calling it good. I'm not saying it should have happened. I don't like this is what they did, but. And then after that but, they'll proceed to actually justify it, right? They'll say, well, what other options did Hamas have, right? Hamas was left with no other choice. They were under such conditions that I totally understand why they did what they did. And they will use every excuse in the book to make up reasons why it was okay. But this question of, was it a genocide? Was it genocidal, I guess is what he specifically asked, and whether or not it was ethnic cleansing, beside the point, right? Like, it's just it lends itself to pedantic arguments. And those are they're insufferable to me. I don't like pedantic arguments. Sometimes I understand that they're necessary, but I think this would have just skipped that part. But I don't know. We'll see how they respond. Vanessa for Truth says, I haven't watched much of the discourse on Israel-Palestine. What's your opinion, Wick? No, the October 7th attacks were absolutely, under no circumstances, justifiable, and are at least partly responsible for what's happening in Gaza right now, right? We could draw a direct correlation, a direct causation between what Hamas did on October 7th and what the IDF is doing now. It's just perpetuating a cycle of violence. It is by no means okay. We should be condemning it with all of our full-throatedly, right? But what happens is that a lot of the people who aren't justifying it will meme about it and say, oh, do you condemn Hamas? Oh, you do condemn Hamas? As if that's a meme, that it's silly to ask if they condemn Hamas. It's not silly to ask. A lot of these people don't condemn Hamas. A lot of these people celebrate Hamas but try to hide it because of optics. It's not a silly question to ask. It's something a lot of them do, right? So anyway, let's see how they respond to this. In my opinion, poor question, but we'll see, right?
The problem with October 7th is this. The Hamas fighters who invaded southern Israel were ordered to murder, rape, and do all the nasty things that they did. And they killed some 1,200 Israelis that day and abducted, as we know, something like 250 civilians, mostly civilians, also some soldiers, took them back to Gaza, dungeons in Gaza. But they were motivated not just by the words of their current leader in the Gaza Strip, but by their ideology, which is embedded in their charter from 1988, if I remember correctly. And that charter is genocidal. It says that the Jews must be eradicated, basically, from the land of Israel, from Palestine. The Jews are described there as sons of apes and pigs. The Jews are a base people, killers of prophets, and they should not exist in Palestine. It doesn't say that they necessarily should be murdered all around the world, the Hamas charter, but certainly the Jews should be eliminated from Palestine. And this is the driving ideology behind the massacre of the Jews on October 7th, which brought down on the Gaza Strip, and I think with the intention by the Hamas of the Israeli counteroffensive, because they knew that that counteroffensive would result in many Palestinian dead, because the Hamas fighters and their weaponry and so on were embedded in the population in Gaza, and they hoped to benefit from this in the eyes of world public opinion as Israel chased these Hamas people and their ammunition dumps and so on, and killed lots of Palestinian civilians in the process.
That's just all true. Like, everything he said there is just correct. It's backed up by the evidence. It's backed up by what we see actually occurring. It's backed up by the words of the leadership of Hamas. It's backed up by the words of past terrorists and things like that. This is I think it's in, please correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's called the Zalkari method. The idea is to get the other side to do something so heinous that the other side will overreact, right? that will overreact and do what the IDF is doing now and be not as cautious as they should with their campaign and go a little overboard and kill a bunch of people, like, in response to what you did. And then you can point to that and you can say, look, they're monsters. They're monsters. See, we were justified in doing what we did, right? October 7th was justified because look what they're doing to us now. We said that they were monsters. Look how monstrous they're acting. But my brother in Christ, you're the one who went and killed 1,100 people on purpose, right? Men, women, and children. In order, like, what did you think would happen? You knew this would happen. You planned for this to happen. This was part of the strategy for this to happen. You put up the Palestinian people as pawns, as a blood sacrifice, so that you can get your political goals accomplished. That's what happened, right? So this guy here, based. Pondering Politics, $20. You should also check out the Bad Faith Biden Bash Fest. Piers Morgan sprung on Destiny. I might. If I can't stomach this, I might absolutely switch to that. Link it to me. You got my DMs, Pondering. Just throw me the DM of the VOD there, and I might check it out. Let's see. What are you guys saying? Vanessa for True says, I think it's a massive travesty, that Israelis have no real homeland and that Palestinians had their home taken from them. I think it sucks that a terrorist group is all they have to speak for them. Absolutely. Look, I'm a big believer in a two-state solution. I want peace in the region, but we have to recognize that with the actions of Hamas, there can't be any peace with that. We can't make peace with that. We can't negotiate with that kind of thing. We've tried, right? Biden has been trying desperately to get both sides to the table here. And it's not just one side that's failing at this. Both sides are failing at this. But there's been time and time and again where Hamas has been offered ceasefires, offered temporary peace, if they would give up the hostages that they hold. And Hamas just flat out refuses. We need to hold them accountable for that. That's a terrible thing. Now, again, I'm not here to excuse the war crimes, the terrible actions of the IDF. But, you know, there are no bad guys. There are no good guys. There's a lot of bad guys, but there are no good guys here, right? You can condemn the IDF without cheering on Hamas. Absolutely. Let's keep going. Let's see what they said. I like his answer. Let's see what everyone else has to say.
Of this was understood by Sinwar, by the head of the Hamas, and he strived for that. But initially, he wanted to kill as many Jews as he could in the border areas around the Gaza Strip.
I'll respond directly to the points you made, and then I'll leave it to Norm to bring in the historical context. That Hamas charter is from the 90s, I think.
1988.
1988, so it's from the 80s. I think your characterization of that charter as anti-Semitic is indisputable.
Okay.
I think your characterization of that charter as genocidal is off the mark.
Simplicity.
And more importantly, that charter has been superseded by a new charter. It, in fact, has been, well, there is
no new charter.
There is
an explanation, a statement they made
2018,
in
a political
2000 and something,
18.
2018, supposedly clarifying things which are in the charter, but it doesn't actually step back from what the charter says. Eliminate Israel, eliminate the Jews from the land of Israel.
And in 2018, the Hamas charter, if we look at the current version of the charter,
it's not called a
charter.
Whether you're calling it a charter, it wasn't. The only thing called the charter is what was issued in 1988 by Yassin himself.
Anyway, it makes a clear distinction between Jews and Zionists in 2018. Now,
this is why I don't like these pedantic arguments. Is it a charter? Is it not a charter? What do you call it? I mean, I get it's important, but come on. Okay, they issued a statement that attempted to clarify what they meant. Okay, actions always speak louder than words. So they can clarify all they want, but when they got the chance to act on October 7th, what did they do? They killed every Jew they could find and kidnapped the rest, right? They kidnapped some of them, but they killed every Jew they could find. That's what they did. That's what they did. Let's continue.
Now, you can choose to dismiss it, believe it. It's sincere, it's insincere, whatever.
Insincere is probably the right word.
Secondly, I'm really unfamiliar with fighters who consult these kinds of documents before they go on.
In their education system. In the kindergarten, they're told, kill the Jews. They practice with make-believe guns and uniforms when they're 5 years old in the kindergartens of the Hamas.
At the instruction of the Commissioner General of UNRWA, right?
I didn't say that. I said the Hamas has kindergartens and summer camps in which they train to kill Jews, children aged 5 and 6.
Secondly, you keep saying Jews, to which I would respond.
They use the word Jews.
To which I would respond that Hamas does not have a record of deliberately targeting Jews who are not Israelis. And in fact, it also doesn't have a record of deliberately targeting either Jews or Israelis outside Israel and Palestine. So, you know, all this talk of...
Chat. Where else does Hamas operate? I know that they have their leaderships in Qatar right now. That's fair. But as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, most of their power base is in Gaza. Is that incorrect? Am I wrong? Am I missing something? As I understand it, a vast majority of where they have influence and the power to act is in the Gaza region. So, yeah, no shit they haven't targeted anyone outside of Israel. That's all they have the reach to do. Yeah, no shit. That doesn't, like, it would be as if you look at someone who's killed like 5 or 6 people in a town and then say, well, you know, they're confining their actions to just this town, so that it's not like they're killing women everywhere. They're just killing the ones that are in, they're just killing the ones in Boston. They're just killing Bostonian women. So how are you going to call them misogynist? Right? It's not that they're going around killing women everywhere. They're not killing them in New York. They're not killing them in Florida. They're not killing them in California. They're just killing the ones in Boston. How are they misogynist? Come on. Get better arguments. Let's keep hearing.
Unlike the Hezbollah, which has targeted Jews outside Palestine.
We're talking about October 7th and Hamas. If you'd also like to speak about Hezbollah, let's get to that separately, if you don't mind.
Wait. Yes, we are talking about October 7th, which happened in Israel, but you just said, literally 30 seconds before I paused this show, the show, that Hamas doesn't have a history of targeting Jews or Israelis outside of Israel. And so your counterpart brought up the point that Hezbollah, who does have influence outside of Israel and Gaza, does have a history of this, that there are connections between these two people. And you were like, well, no, we're just talking about October 7th right now. What are you doing? Come on.
So, again, genocidal, well, if that term is going to be discussed, my first response would be, let's talk about potentially genocidal actions against Israelis rather than against Jews, for the reasons that I just mentioned. And again, I find this constant conflation of Jews, Israel, Zionism to be a bit disturbing. Secondly, I think there are quite a few...
Okay, I'm sorry I'm pausing this a lot. I apologize. But he's just hitting all my buttons, okay? No one's conflating Jews, Israelis, Zionists, etc. here at least in this portion that we have watched. And again, this is 2 hours in, so it's perhaps during the course of this 2 hours that was done that I have not seen. Fair enough. But during the course of this interaction here, when your counterpart, what is his name? Benny Morris, I believe? Benny Morris goes and tells you what's in the 1988 charter. That's not a conflation that's happening. That's telling you what the charter says. They don't say Zionists. They don't say Israelis. They say Jews. It's their words. It's their words. Landline says Wick is pathetic and he should fix his rotting tooth. It's so repugnant. There you go, buddy. It's for you. Glad you're here, though. Welcome. Thanks for helping my numbers today. Okay, let's keep going.
Indications in the factual record that raise serious questions about the accusations of the genocidal intent and genocidal practice of what happened on October 7th. And my final point would be, I don't think I should take your word for it. I don't think you should take my word for it. I think what we need here is a proper, independent, international investigation. And the reason we need that of genocide during this conflict, whether by Palestinians on October 7th or Israel thereafter. And the reason that we need such an investigation is because there won't be any hearings on what Hamas did on October 7th at the International Court of Justice, because the International Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide deals only with states and not with movements. I think the International Criminal Court, and specifically its current prosecutor, 𝕾𝖍𝖙, lacks any and all credibility. He's been an absolute failure at his job. He's just been sitting on his backside for years on this file.
This is why I didn't like the question. Whether it's a genocide, whether it was genocidal intent, whether it was an ethnic cleansing, whether ethnically cleansing was intended on October 7th, it's almost beside the point. It's almost beside the point. It doesn't fucking matter whether you call it a genocide or it might for international, like, no, let's say they do. Okay, no, this is my problem here. Let's say the International Criminal Justice Court comes out, the UN comes out, it's not vetoed. Everyone around the world at the same time says what happened is genocidal intent. There was genocidal intent. There was an ethnic cleansing intent. What fundamentally changes in our response? What fundamentally changes in how we deal with it? What fundamentally changes at all? What? Okay, so what is the question, right? So what? And then what? They call it a genocide. Boom, it's genocide. Call it ethnic cleansing. Boom, it's ethnic cleansing. And to be clear, I'm talking about October 7th. I'm talking about the October 7th attacks today. They call it a genocide. They call it an ethnic cleansing attempt, etc. So what? It lacks. What are they going to do? Maybe pass a UN resolution? Okay. Does anyone, like, Omar, I'm not taking callers right now, okay? I'm not talking callers right now. We're going to do this until it's time for me to jump on with Brianna. Oops, let me turn that down. Yeah, what happens? Who cares? Let's keep going.
And I think I would point out that Hamas has called for independent investigations of all these allegations. Israel has categorically rejected any international investigation, of course, fully supported by the United States. And I think what is required is to have credible investigations of these things, because I don't think you're going to convince me. I don't think I'm going to convince you. And this is two people sitting across the table from each
No,
other.
but there's certain things you don't even have to investigate. You know how many citizens, civilians died in the
Yes.
October 7th
Yes,
assault.
but that's not.
You know that there are lots of allegations of rape. I don't know how persuaded you are of those. They did find bodies without heads, which is
There were no beheadings
Islamic.
of infants.
There were some beheadings apparently.
The Israelis didn't even claim that in the document they submitted before the ICJ. Go read what your government submitted. It never mentioned beheadings.
Well, as far as I know,
I
there were some
read it.
people who were beheaded.
They didn't behead them. They just burnt them alive. They just threw grenades at them. But it's no beheadings, gang. Whoa, man, am I? Whoa, I was worried about that for a minute, gang. Oh, beheadings? Whoa, that would have been tough. But just the grenades and the burning alive and tying them up and pounding nails into their genitals. You know, it was just that, but no beheadings. Okay. Well, I hate this fucking discourse. Okay, I really do. Like, the pedantry involved, right? The pedantry involved is disgusting. It's disgusting. Hamas on October 7th went into Israel, right into these kibbutz and all these things, and looked for and either took them hostage or brutally murdered everyone that they could find and get their hands on. They did not spare anyone. They called up their mom about it on the phone, right? There was a recording of one of the people who went in there, called up their mom on the phone to brag about how they had killed 10 Jews with their bare hands, or their own hands, I should say. So when you're getting all affronted, like, there were no beheadings, you're missing the fucking point. You're missing the goddamn point. And yeah, as Valis says, I'm pretty sure there were beheadings unless some of this shit I saw on October 7th wasn't from that day, which is possible. Like, I remember on the night, because I was up scrolling because I couldn't sleep, and I remember suddenly my feed was full of these videos that have since been taken down and removed, obviously, of just the goriest stuff. I remember seeing this guy dragged out of his car and his throat slit, right? I remember seeing bodies being paraded. It was a lot. But yeah, it's ugh. But this pedantry about it, it's just a way, it's chaff that they throw up to kind of distract you. So you get to arguing whether or not these specific instances of beheading happened, and it's meant to distract from the broader point in the broader discussion of Hamas purposely targeting and killing hundreds and hundreds of civilians in Israel. So yeah, let's keep going.
Beheaded,
Yeah.
but
We could bring it up right
you
now.
also deny that there were rapes there.
I didn't deny. I said I've not seen convincing evidence that confirms it. I've said that from day one, and I'll say it today, 4.5 months later.
Do you know that they killed 800 or 900 civilians in their assault?
Absolutely.
Yes.
That seems to me indisputable.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm
Yes, and
glad
it's-
that you're
I've
conceding
said that.
something.
I've said that from day one.
Well, to be clear, you haven't. You did a debate. I don't remember the talk show, but you seem to imply that there was a lot of crossfire and that it might have been the IDF that had killed a lot of.
I said that there is no question, because the names were published in Haaretz, there is no question that roughly of the 1,200 people killed, 800 of them were civilians. I see 850, fine. So I never said that, but then I said, no, we don't know exactly how they were killed, but 800 civilians killed, no, 850, no question there. And I also said on repeated occasions, there cannot be any doubt, in my opinion, as of now, with the available evidence, that Hamas was responsible for significant atrocities. And I made sure to include the plural.
There's a lot of tricky language being employed here. Do you think of the
There's nothing
850?
tricky. It's called attaching value to words and not talking like a motor mouth.
Called pedantry, to be clear. It's not about your speed here. It's not about the fact that you talk slow or fast. It's about the tricky, and I think that's a very good word choice here, that tricky language which acts as a shield, right? In order to kind of couch what you really mean. It's a way of being able to say things optically that you don't really mean. So when you say something like, I think it's indisputable that 850 civilians died and that Hamas committed multiple atrocities, that can be perfectly true. But, right, when you bring that up to distract from the fact that you have also said, right, that you have also said that those many of those deaths, it's unclear to you whether or not Hamas killed them or the IDF killed them in a crossfire incident or in friendly fire incident, then again, it's a way to weasel out of committing to a position of actually saying what you actually feel in these things for optics. It's very optically clever, but it's something that when you get called out on, just bite the bullet, man. Just say that's what you're doing, because that's fucking what you're doing.
Okay.
I am very careful about qualifying because that's
Then
what
let me just
language
ask
is
for-
about.
That's great. Then let me just ask a clarifying question. Do you firmly believe that the majority of the 850 civilians were killed by Hamas?
My view is, even if it were half, 400 is a huge number.
You see what he did there? You see what he did there? He won't answer directly. He goes into, even if it was half, it was a huge number, right? What is the implication there? Because he is right. He is choosing his words very carefully here. He is choosing his words extremely carefully, because in these word choices, he leaves open the implication that, again, a good, solid, 400 could have been killed by the IDF, right? That's the that's the gap he leaves in his statement, and it is on purpose, and he is doing it with intent.
By any reckoning,
Why
it's
not?
Okay, wait, you didn't.
I said
wait,
even
Why?
if
wait,
because
wait, you didn't answer
Benny,
my question.
because Professor Morris, I don't know. I agree with 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙. I'm not sure if he concedes the 400. I'll say
Why 400? Whoever,
Because I
whoever
have-
thought up the
because-
number 400.
right, as I
800
said,
of the 850
Well,
were slaughtered
because-
by Hamas.
if I may.
don't
Maybe
know.
a couple of individuals were killed in the Israeli action.
I don't know.
You're saying from
Professor
day one you
Morris,
believe this
Professor-
particular thing, and
Professor
you clearly
Morris,
don't. You clearly
I
don't
said
believe this
from
thing. You don't.
day one,
You said
no,
people died. That's not
No.
controversial.
Wait,
Okay,
hold on. If I may.
That's not controversial.
Mr. Bonnell, I attach value to words.
Yes, you said that.
When
If you
I,
value them, you
when
start
I
repeating them
was,
so
yes,
much.
Mr. Bonnell, please.
I hate it. I can't lie to you guys. I hate this shit. It's this tricky kind of language games that you're playing in order to try to not say what you actually mean, right? To not say what you actually believe, to try to be to come across to the average listener as reasonable when you're not reasonable at all. That's not what you are. If you actively actually believe, right, that a significant portion of the people who died on October 7th were gunned down by the IDF, you, again, I'm talking about the Israeli civilians that were killed, right? Not the Hamas people that were killed, but the Israeli civilians that were killed. If you think a significant portion, right, more than just a couple dozen, right, were killed by the IDF in a crossfire, that's a wild thing to believe. And if you do believe that, please provide evidence, right, that is what happened. But I'm pretty sure he's not going to do that. And two, he's not even going to admit that's what he believes. He's going to use these kind of non-falsifiable statements that you can't, it's very hard to attack because he's right. He doesn't know. And when he says that, right, it implies this reasonableness that isn't there, right? It implies that if he were to just see enough evidence that would convince him of this, then he would change his mind and he would say he would know. But these are the kinds of things people who say, oh, we can't really know what was in someone's heart, right? I can't really know if any of you are actually real and not AI bots. I don't know that you all aren't just AI bots sent by my enemies to make fun of me, right? I don't know that. Like, that's true. But come on. Come on. What are you doing here, man? Like, it's obvious what you're doing here. What you're doing here is you're trying to run cover for your actual beliefs, to not look unreasonable, to score some points, but being able to couch that in language which leaves open all these possibilities so you and your little Hamas dick-sucking friends can say, oh, well, you know, Israel's actually a piece of shit and Hamas isn't really that bad, right? It's a way to kind of just... It's a language game. It's a game. It's a game. And he says this again and again. He gives away the game again and again. Even in these short segments that we've had, where he says stuff like, I am very careful with my words. I attach value to them and I'm very careful. Yes, we know. We see that happening. We are aware of what you're doing. But you are saying that to try to imply as if you were doing one thing, when it's actually what you are doing is running cover for what you actually believe, which most people, reasonable people, would know if you just said it right up, frankly, as fucking unhinged. That's what's happening. Cryborn for $2. Who told you? I don't reveal my sources, sir. I never reveal my sources. Let's keep going.
Slow down the speech and attempt to listen. When I was explicitly asked by Piers Morgan, I said there can be no question that Hamas committed atrocities
I've heard this,
on
yes.
October 7th. If you want me to pin down a number, I can't do that.
I didn't ask you to pin down a number. You can listen to what I'm saying.
Ask
no, my question is,
okay.
I'll ask a very precise question.
Sorry,
to you because
excuse
you're
me.
not.
It's a very easy
If I
question.
understood your question correctly.
My question is, do you think the majority of the people that were killed on October 7th, the civilians, were killed by Hamas, or are we subscribing to the idea that the IDF killed hundreds, 400 or 500
No,
in the
but
crossfire?
let me explain why that's a difficult question to answer. The total number of civilians killed was 800, 850.
Mhm.
We know that Hamas is responsible probably for the majority of those killings. We also know that there were killings by Islamic Jihad. We also know...
Well, we're bunching together the Islamic Jihad and the Hamas. So that's...
Okay, yes, there were Gazan civilians who came over, right? There were Islamic jihadists. There were other groups who were involved in the Hamas attack. But when we say Hamas attack, again, this is pedantry. What you're trying to do is get a gotcha and say, oh, look, you're being dishonest, when every reasonable person knows what they are asking, what both of these individuals, Morris and Destiny, are asking is, do you believe that a vast majority of the people killed on October 7th, the civilians killed, were killed by Hamas? It's even if you are sympathetic to the Palestinian cause, even if you're super pro-Palestine, you could just cop to that answer, yeah, unless you don't believe that. And in which case, the conversation takes a turn, and we have to interrogate why you don't believe that. What is your counter evidence? What is the evidence that you have that this is not the case, that this is not true? And again, they try to do these word games. It's pedantry, and it's infuriating.
His question was specifically
no, but he means
about...
it's the Raiders. He means the Raiders.
I'm speaking in opposition to the conspiracy theory that people like. Do you prefer Norm or Professor Finkelstein, or what do you? I don't know how do you prefer?
Well, it's not a conspiracy theory.
Well, the conspiracy theory is the idea that the IDF killed the majority of them.
It's not a conspiracy theory.
And then there's also a theory that, as Norm pointed out on the show that he was on, that he thought that it was very strange that, given how reputable Israeli services are when it comes to sending ambulances, retrieving bodies, he thought it was very strange that that number was continually being adjusted.
And do you know
so
why?
when you say that in combination with, well, I'm not sure how many were killed.
Well, do you know why the number? Do you know why the number went down? The number went down because the Israeli authorities were in possession of 200 corpses that were burned to a crisp that they assumed were Israelis who had been killed on October 7th. They later determined that these were in fact Palestinian fighters. Now, how does a Palestinian fighter get burnt to a crisp?
No, you're mixing two things.
What do you mean? What do you mean how they get burnt to a crisp? Because they got fucking blown up with a missile or something, or a rocket, or who knows, right? That's not what does that. My question is, so what? Yes, they had a number initially. I think it was 1,300 initially. They adjusted that number down once they tested these corpses. That's all true, right? And you are implying that that indicates some sort of nefariousness, something that went on that was shady, when in fact it's evidence of the fundamental, at least attempt at honesty by Israel in trying to get the number accurate. 𝕬𝖎, come on. That's funny, but come on. It's one of those things where, again, it's this, man, I hate people who do this, right? And there's plenty of people who do. It's not just them. They do these illusions, right? They don't say it outright, but they'll say a thing and it will allude into the average listener's mind all these possible reasons. And they'll do this purposefully. Again, they're very careful with their words. They put value into their words. And they do it for a very specific reason, in order to lead the mind down certain paths that they can't come out and just say, at least not at first. They have to prime the pump. They have to get you ready to be ready to hear that. And so they'll prime the pump with, isn't it strange that they had to adjust these numbers down? Right? That they had 1,300 at first, but then it went to 1,100. And then they looked at it, and they looked at all those bodies that were burned to a crisp, 200 Palestinian fighters, and they had to adjust the number down. How are those Palestinian fighters burnt to a crisp? What are these questions? Like, and then they, with all their other statements, with all their other advocacy, you can't look at these things in not a vortex, in a void, right? You have to look at them in the context of everything else that is being said, with the discourse at the time, with all these other things that are going around. You can't look at it in a blank room, because it's not. These aren't said in a blank room sans of any context. These are statements made in the context of the larger discourse, which, again, all of the individuals here are part of and well aware of. And as Finkelstein keeps saying, he's very careful with his words. So I take him at his word in that, when he goes through and he makes these allusions to perfidy that might be going on. We're going to go through a little bit more of this, and then we're going to... Is the video down? Hello? Where did all the video go? What do you mean? Can you guys not see me? Hello? 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 Are you there? Let's hope it's still... Oh, no, we're good? Okay, cool. Let's couple more minutes of this, and we gotta get ready for the next Wick, I'm muted? No, don't fuck with me. Okay.
Things. Some of the bodies they weren't able to identify, and eventually they ruled that some of them were actually Arab marauders rather than Israeli victims. A few of them also, of the Jews, were burnt to a crisp. And it took them time to work this out. And they came out initially with a slightly higher figure, 1,400 dead, and eventually reduced it to 1,200
and the reason
dead Israelis.
And the reason is that a proportion of Israeli civilians killed on October 7th, I don't believe it was a majority. We don't know how many. Some were killed in crossfire. Some were killed by Israeli shell fire, helicopter fire, and so on. And the majority were killed by Palestinians. And of that majority, we don't know. I mean, again, I understood your question as referring specifically to Hamas, which is why I tried to answer it that way. But if you meant generically Palestinians, yes. if you mean specifically Hamas, we don't have a clear breakdown of how
No,
many
I don't mean
were
specifically Hamas,
Okay,
but I
well,
just think when you use the word some, that's doing a lot of heavy
We'll
lifting.
use some.
That's fine, but some can mean anywhere from 1% to 49%.
But we don't know.
Some.
So the numbers here and the details are interesting and important almost from a legal perspective. But if we zoom out, the moral perspective, are Palestinians
Lex, I love you, buddy. But that legal perspective that you've realized that you've unleashed the pedantry and unleashed, that's on you for asking the initial question, okay? That's on you, buddy. It's on you. So, no, I love you, buddy. I love you, Lex. I'm eager to see more of this. People said this was boring. This isn't boring. I enjoy this kind of discussion. It is a little slow, but it is what it is. But we are going, my friends, to adjust and switch, and we are going to get ready. Oops, my bad. We are going to get ready to go on and help out our good friend, Brianna, and with her what she needs. Give me 1 second. Let me see if she wants me to jump backstage. Oh, hold on. I'm waiting for Okay. So, gang, we may have a little more time. Let me know when you need me. So, gang, guess what? We get to go through more of it. Hooray! Are we excited? Hooray! Let's see, what else are you guys saying right now? Chargeable says, I wouldn't say I like it. I found it infuriating because I find it morally dishonest. Well, I like the back and forth, but I understand what you're saying. Screaming 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙𝖘𝖍𝖔𝖜 says, pedantry, Wick's bread and butter until he doesn't like it. I try very hard not to deal myself with pedantry. I know that no one's immune to this. I know that sometimes it's important, but yes. Firechild, member for 3 months at tier 2. Hey, dudes and dudettes. Welcome, Firechild. Always a pleasure, gang. You guys know that not only can you super chat at me, but if you don't have much to say and you'd like to support the channel just by supporting the channel, memberships are available and you can become a YouTube member, and it really does help me out. On Kick, what's your IP says, not on Twitch, must be something spicy to be on Kick. Not that spicy. It's just Destiny's part of it. And Destiny's banned on Twitch. And I have enough people that constantly hound me and try to get me reported that if I streamed this on Twitch, they would report my channel and I would take a hit. So we can't stream on Twitch today because of that. Vala says, can't say I've seen Wick be pedantic yet, personally. I've done it before. It's happened, right? I will admit to that. But it's not something I try to do on any regular basis. It is something I actively work against. But opinions will vary. Vanessa for Truth says, I haven't seen many debates where he has a partner, only when him and 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙𝖘𝖍𝖔𝖜 take on idiots like Andrew Wilson or whatever podcast. Are you talking about me or are you talking about Destiny? I don't think I've ever been on with 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙𝖘𝖍𝖔𝖜. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm just blanking on it. Oh, Destiny, yeah. I've seen Destiny with his partners before, but yeah, he tends to do solo work usually. You know what? Since we have some time here, and it looks like Brianna isn't ready yet, let's keep going with the show. Let's keep watching, and let's see what we can get to. So let me readjust the screen here. Apologies again for the back. I told you guys at the beginning this is going to be sloppy, right? I told you this is going to be sloppy. Let's get back to it. I saved my spot, right? We're here. And let's keep going. Hell yeah, brothers and sisters. Here, I'll move this. I'll move this right over here. Let us get back to it. One moment. Let me adjust my screen. Make sure the right things are showing. Okay, I think we're good. Let's get back.
From Gaza justified in violent resistance?
Well, Palestinians have the right to.
Okay, yeah, this is the question he should have asked initially, in my opinion. Right? He should have just asked this initially, like, does it justify it? Yeah, let's see what see where it goes.
To resistance. Palestinian, that right includes the right to armed resistance. At the same time, armed resistance is subject to the laws of war. And there are very clear regulations that separate legitimate acts of armed resistance from acts of armed resistance that are not legitimate. And
the attacks of October 7th, where did they land for you?
There's been almost exclusive focus on the attacks on civilian population centers and the killings of civilians on October 7th. What is much less discussed, to the point of amnesia, is that there were very extensive attacks on Israeli military and intelligence facilities on October 7th. I would make a very clear distinction between those two. And secondly,
he's right. They did also attack military targets. But you know why they attacked military targets? And which military targets they attacked? They attacked the ones that would get in the way or respond to their attacks on the civilian population. They hit the military targets for the express purpose of being able to hit the civilian targets, to get to the ooey gooey center of civilians, which was their real goal. So you're right. They did hit military targets on October 7th. They did hit intelligence targets. But if you look at what happened, if you watch which targets they hit, and you look at why, we can see a very clear picture. They attacked those things that would respond to them going in and attacking the civilians. Okay. Let's keep going.
I'm not sure that I would characterize the efforts by Palestinians on October 7th to seize Israeli territory and Israeli population centers as in and of themselves illegitimate.
You mean attacking Israeli civilians is
No,
legitimate?
no, that's not what I
didn't
said.
understand what you said.
I think what you had on October 7th was an effort by Hamas to seize Israeli territory and population
And
centers.
kill civilians.
That's not what I said. What I said is, I think I would not describe the effort to seize Israeli territory as in and of itself illegitimate.
Okay, yes. Seizing territory isn't illegitimate unless you seize that territory for the express purpose of killing the civilians who are in that territory, which again is what Hamas did. They didn't go set up, say, we're going to occupy this now. You are now our subjects. You are under our leadership. What they did was they went in, they cleared it out of anyone who was in there who was a civilian. And by cleared out, I mean they took hostages and murdered a bunch of people. Okay? Bunch of people. And then they... Again, it would be incorrect to characterize that as simply seizing territory, because that's not what it was. Yes, they seized that territory, but they did so for an express purpose. And that purpose being to kill all the Jews that were in there and to take a bunch hostage, okay? That's what they did. Just an update for all of you. We don't know. I don't know how or when the Brianna thing's going to happen. They called me last minute. She's trying to get things set up. But we got content till then. So stick with me, kiddos. We'll get through. Vanessa says, so what should Palestinians do? October 7th and Hamas isn't the right choice, but what should these people do? They are forced to live in horrible conditions. That's a very good question. I think that a lot of them just need to accept a two-state solution that isn't what they want, that isn't perfect. Like, at the end of the day, and it sucks to say, but you lost the wars. You lost. You need to stop. You need to stop pretending you haven't lost. And it sucks. Now, you've been offered a lot. Two-state solution, you should accept it with both hands, right? That's what you should do. The armed resistance isn't working. It's only making things worse for you, and it's getting you all killed. That's my thoughts. Toby-Wan Kenobi says two-state solution won't work. I think it can. There's a lot of obstacles in the way from a two-state solution, but I think it's the only path forward that doesn't involve ethnic cleansing on either side. It's the only path forward which doesn't involve a pile of bodies that touches the sky. So yeah, you're correct. There's a lot of obstacles to it, but it's the only way that doesn't involve mass murder.
As a separate issue from the killing of Israeli civilians, where in those cases where they had been deliberately targeted, that's very clearly illegitimate.
Whole families were slaughtered in kibbutzim.
But I'm making...
But many of them...
Hold on. Screaming Sturmovik says the French resistance didn't work until it did. I have seen no evidence over the last 80 years that this will ever work. Generations have been sacrificed for the quote-unquote resistance. I, for one, am tired of the blood. And I know a lot of Palestinians are also tired of the blood. But you have people safe in Qatar or safe behind their keyboard in America, in the Western world, saying, go, die for this thing that we believe in. Die, put your bodies on the line for this thing that we believe in, right? We'll send you money. We'll send you rockets. We'll send you bullets and things like that. Go and die for this. 80 years, gang. 80 fucking years. Ain't working. Maybe try something new.
Many of them left-wingers, incidentally, who helped Palestinians go to hospitals in Israel and so on.
Again,
even drove Palestinian cancer patients to hospitals.
Again,
Israeli...
I'm making a distinction here.
But you don't seem to be very condemnatory of what the Hamas did.
Well, I don't do selective condemnation.
I'm not talking about selective.
I don't do selective
specific
outrage.
Condemnation of this specific.
Well, you know what it is. You know,
I would, for example, condemn Israeli assaults on civilians, deliberate assaults on civilians.
Yes,
I would condemn them, but you're not doing that with the Hamas.
You know what the issue is? I've been speaking in public now, I would say since the late 1980s, and interviewed and so on. I have never on one occasion ever been asked to condemn any Israeli act. When I've been in group discussions, those...
Is he an Israeli? I don't know much about this guy. Oh, hey, Firechild, thank you for the 5 gift memberships. To who's the lucky few? Vanessa for Truth got one, Jessica Foss, Artemis Fowl, Marcus Not Aurelius, and an Angel That Has Fallen. All worthy sons and daughters of the WhickTV. Okay, thank you. Very generous of you. I really appreciate it. Everyone but you. Valith, we'll get you next time, buddy. We'll get you next time. Maybe someone will spread the continual gifting goodwill, and you'll be able to be hit with some good gifts here. But yeah, I don't know much about this 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙 guy. I don't. So, like, it would be weird to ask an Israeli IDF soldier if they condemned Hamas. I mean, it'd be a weird thing to ask, right? So if he's saying, and again, I don't know him, but I'm assuming he's Palestinian, or at least advocates for the Palestinian cause. it would be weird to ask him if he condemns the IDF or Israel's actions, because you probably don't need to ask him. He'll probably do it unprompted, but I could be wrong.
Supporting the Israeli action or perspective, I have never encountered an example where these individuals are asked to condemn what Israel is doing. The demand and obligation of condemnation is exclusively applied, in my personal experience over decades, is exclusively applied to Palestinians.
No, this is
and those.
nonsense.
Well,
Israel is condemned day and night on every television channel, on every, and has been for the
I'm
last
telling
decade.
you about a
Morris,
personal experience
Professor
lasting
Morris,
decades.
You said, quote.
Uh-oh. Oh, no.
I'm trying to quote what you just said.
I shouldn't have said anything at any point.
You should say,
Uh-oh.
Professor Morris.
Yes.
You just said, I would condemn
And I have
anytime
condemned.
Israel deliberately attacks civilians.
Yes.
Okay? The problem, Professor Morris, is over and over again, you claim in the face of overwhelming evidence that they didn't attack civilians.
That's not true. I've said
Really?
Israel has attacked civilians.
Professor
in
Morris.
Kibya, Israel attacked
Right,
civilians.
Professor
And I've
Morris.
written extensively
Okay,
about
I
it.
know that.
In Kafir Qasim, they killed
yes.
civilians. And I've written
And now
that.
let's.
So you're just eliminating,
Okay.
you're selecting,
Okay.
as Stephen says, you cherry pick.
If I were
Cherry pick is the right word for it, right? And for a man who claims to attach significant value to his words, he sure does like to ignore a lot of what other people say. And this idea that people do not condemn Israel is farcical at best. How many UN resolutions have there been condemning Israel and its actions? How many have attempted to be passed, right? People are asked to condemn Israel almost on the daily. Even on October 7th. Even while like in the direct aftermath of October 7th, people were asked to condemn Israel and its actions, right? This isn't, what? Like this misrepresentation of a reality that we can all see staring us dead in the face is wild to me. It makes me not trust you when you pull that kind of shit, right? When you pull that kind of shit, when I'm looking at the sky, it's obviously blue, and then you ask me to call it orange, right? Or you say, isn't that orange sky lovely tonight? I'm going to look at you like you're crazy, right? So this idea that Rabbani and Finkelstein are bringing up, that no one ever condemns or is asked to condemn Israel, no one ever condemns Israel, is just not true. Like any amount of looking into that statement, you will see on its surface is just farcical. It's just wrong. And this is what they try to frame these conversations in a way that's just fundamentally dishonest. This is not to say that pro-Israeli voices don't also engage in similar types of behavior. They absolutely do. But we're talking about these people in this debate now, right? And even in this debate now, Morris is saying, I've condemned the IDF and I've condemned Israel, and this is when I've done it. This is what I've written about. This is my evidence that I've condemned it. So when you say that I don't condemn it, you're lying or incorrect, because this is where I have. He provides direct evidence, right? And again, I haven't read his book. I don't know if he does, but we're going to assume that this is easily fact-checkable. I'm going to assume he's correct in this and that he has done this, right? If it turns out, right, later I'm linked to clips of his book where I read some of his words and it turns out he did not do that, I will retract my statement. But for now, going by his words in this conversation, it's clear that he does. Let's keep going.
Before you do cherry pick.
Let's fast forward when you were an adult. What did you say about the 1982 Lebanon War?
What did I say?
You don't remember?
In 1982, what did he say? Gang, I wasn't born in 1982, okay? Like, I was not alive. What? Like, but don't you remember 40 fucking years ago when you said that? Like, come on. Come on.
Remember? Okay. Allow me.
Uh-oh.
Okay. So it happens that I was not at all I had no interest in the Israel-Palestine conflict as a young man until the
This is true.
until the 1982 Lebanon War.
Yeah.
Uh,
Lost the passage.
I'll find it.
Okay, real quick, while he's searching for that,
Yeah, allow me.
you
That's
bring up
good.
something that's really important that a lot of people don't draw a distinction between, in that there is just causes for war and there is just ways to act within a war.
Correct.
And these two things principally do have a distinction from one another.
Correct.
However, while I appreciate the recognition of the distinction, the idea that the cause for war that Hamas was engaged in, I don't believe, if we look at their actions in war or the statements that they've made, it doesn't seem like it had to do with territorial acquisition.
No. The
Like
point,
taking land
no,
back.
the point I was making was
I promise I didn't pre-watch. If you guys remember, that's what I said. It didn't look like territorial acquisition to me. But I guess Destiny also picked up on that. But let's see if he clarifies. Let's go.
what was Hamas trying to achieve militarily on October 7th? And I was pointing out that the focus has been very much on Hamas attacks on civilians and atrocities and so on. And I'm not saying those things should be ignored. What I'm saying is that what's getting lost in the shuffle is that there were extensive attacks on military and intelligence facilities.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as let's say, the other aspects are concerned, because I think either you or Lex asked me about the legitimacy of these attacks. I said, I'm unclear whether efforts by Hamas to seize Israeli population centers in and of themselves are illegitimate, as opposed to actions that either deliberately targeted Israeli civilians or actions that should reasonably have been expected to result in the killings of Israeli civilians. Those strike me as by definition illegitimate.
He's missing the point. We have to ask ourselves, why did they attack those specific military and intelligence targets? Why did they seize that particular land? Again, if you look at what happened on October 7th, if you look at the timeline of events, if you go through what happened and when, the Hamas first struck at the first responders, right? They struck at the military bases that were close to the action that would be able to respond to their attacks throughout the greater Israeli area that they were going through, right? So that's what they hit first. They crippled Israelis' ability to quickly respond, right? They tied up those sectors. They struck those military targets. And to be clear, they were military targets. They struck those military targets in order so that they can be unperturbed while they were doing what they came there to do in the first place, which was kill Jews. That's what they were there for. So, yes, I understand that they also struck at individual military targets during this time, but you ask yourself why. You can't just look at these things in a microcosm. You have to take the bigger picture. You have to pull out. You have to look at, okay, what did they do this for? Why were they hitting these first response centers? Like, why were they doing that? Were they doing that because that was their real target and all the rest was a distraction? It's the opposite. They wanted to be unmolested as they went through house to house, throwing grenades, killing men, women, and children, taking hostages so they can get back. They wanted to do that. So yes, they first struck at the Israeli forces that would be able to fight back. That was their first target. That's what they neutralized or attempted to neutralize so that they could do all the rest of what they wanted to do. This isn't if this is a line you're going down to defend or to cast doubt on the legitimacy of what Hamas was doing, or to say, well, I don't know if we should characterize it like that. This is a very, dog shit argument. It's a dog shit argument. I really hope that Destiny and his buddy Morris pick up on this, but we'll see if they do, right?
And I want to be very clear about that.
Illegitimate means you condemn them.
Illegitimate means they are not legitimate. I have a problem
Condemning
with,
your side, yes.
No, not condemning my side. I have a problem with selective outrage, and I have a problem with selective condemnation. And as I explained to you a few minutes ago, in my decades of appearing in public and being interviewed, I have never seen I've never been asked to condemn an Israeli action. I've never been asked for a moral judgment on an Israeli action. Exclusive request for condemnation has to do with what Palestinians do, and just as importantly, I'm sure if you watch BBC or CNN, when is the last time an Israeli spokesperson has been asked to condemn an Israeli act? I've never seen it.
Yo, gang, get me some clips, because I know I've seen it. I don't know on CNN specifically, but I know on multiple news shows that Israeli representatives have been asked to condemn certain, or to ask their response to certain Israeli actions, right? I don't know if they've been asked specifically, do you condemn what RDF did here? But they absolutely have been asked to explain, right? And to have been challenged, if you will, on air. Can we get some clips of that though? Again, I'm watching this right now, but if you guys can send me some clips, absolutely. But Vala says this is like if someone was asked to condemn Hitler and they were like, "This is selective outrage. I never get asked to condemn American actions." Kinda, a little bit, yeah.
I don't think we condemn the Arab side either, though, right? I don't think there was any condemnation. There
no,
wasn't
but
much.
now that we're talking about Israeli victims, all of a sudden morality is
Well,
central.
I think the reason why it comes up is because there's no shortage of international condemnation for Israel. As Norm will point out 1,000,000 times, that there are 50 billion UN resolutions, you've got Amnesty International, you've got multiple bodies of the UN, you've got now this case for the ICJ, so there's no question of if there's condemnation for Israel.
Sorry if I can interrupt you. In 1948, the entire world stood behind the establishment of a Jewish state in the entire world.
Except the Arab states and the Muslim states.
Well,
not the entire world.
Okay, but I think you know what I mean by that.
The Western democracies, that's what you're saying.
Well, and then also just my quick question.
Western democracies supported the establishment of Israel.
My quick question was, you said that you believe that, this is a very short one, you don't have to, it's just, you think that there's an argument to be made that the people in Gaza, that Hamas and Islamic Jihad, or whoever participated, had a just cause for war. Maybe they didn't do it in the correct way, but they maybe had a just cause for war.
I don't think there's a maybe there. The Palestinians.
Okay, you think they absolutely had a just cause for it. Do you think that Israel has a just cause for Operation Swords of Iron?
No, of course not.
Okay. All right.
I want him to elaborate on that. I want him to explain the difference to me, right? What is the difference between, if you think, as he does, as he says they absolutely have a just cause to go to war with Israel, right? If you think that's the case, and to be clear, I'm not certain that that's the case anymore, right? I'm not certain that's the case anymore. But if you do, what is the difference between what they're doing and what the IDF is doing in their response to atrocities committed against them? Because that's what it is, right? And this is why this is a problem, is because both sides feel entirely justified in responding to the atrocities that are being done against them. And both sides have atrocities being done against them. And you can say, well, obviously Israel has much more power and they're able to enact their will in a much more effective way. And that is true. But that doesn't change the intent. That doesn't change that if Hamas had the ability to, if they had the power to do so, that they would enact 1,000 October 7th, that we would see a repeat of October 7th again and again and again and again. Now, I think it's a great thing that they are unable to effect their will. I think it's a great thing that they have been and are being destroyed. And let's be clear, the IDF is fucking winning their war against Hamas right now. Again, will it be a long-term victory? Probably not. There are reasons to doubt. However, they are absolutely and their short-term goals of dismantling Hamas, they are absolutely being brutally effective in that. Now, that's not to say that what IDF is doing is justified right now. That's not at all, because the IDF is engaging in practices which I would call war crimes in a lot of cases. They have done war crimes during this, since the October 7th thing. I could point you to a few. Their bombing of a few of the refugee camps in order to just get one guy. There's been several instances where I would say that this needs to be investigated as a war crime. However, their response in general, right, the idea of dismantling Hamas is not a war crime, right? And I think overall, we can look at their behavior and say it's not indiscriminate, that it's not these things. But again, pedantry, right? At the end of the day, we must ask ourselves, do people have the right to self-defense? Hamas? Does Hamas have the right to self-defense? Does Israel have the right to self-defense? Yes and no. Because while you do have the right to defend yourself, you don't have the right to defend yourself in certain ways. And the ways that Hamas are going about defending themselves are at the expense of the Palestinian people and civilians. They are absolutely, again, engaged in actions that they knew would kill and result in the death of thousands and thousands and thousands of people, men, women, and children. They instigated it. This recent round of fighting absolutely was instigated by October 7th. Before then, we didn't have the numbers we do today. Wasn't a good situation. Status quo wasn't quo, if you will. There was suffering. There was death, absolutely, but not to this scale. Again, what's the path to peace? We have to talk to each other. We have to see each other and hear each other out. We have to look at each other as human beings. And until both sides can do that, we aren't going to get anywhere. Gang, okay, Brianna Wu is going to come on in about 2 minutes here. So we're going to switch back to that. And we are going to have some interesting discussions. I'm going to pretend to be Counterpoints, and she's going to pretend to be Brianna Wu. And we're going to give you some great content today. So let me set that up. Give me a moment to switch back to what we're doing, and we'll see how this goes. So give me 1 second. Did you guys like the video so far? Did we enjoy the Lex Friedman debate? Do you guys want me to watch more of it tomorrow or something? I will if you want. All right, it's up to you guys. Here, let me get my screens up. Let me pull in some people. Okay, well, once she gets backstage, we'll talk, right? We'll go through it. Okay, let's see what Kick is saying. Kick chat, hello. What is your IP? Says the, what the fuck are laws of war? I don't know. I know of art of war, but not law. None of us were born in 1982, LOL. Same media that said there was massive weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. IDF has an air force. Hard to lose a fight if you control the air. IDF don't have the same rules of engagement like the U.S. does. All that's true. It's difficult to see a world where Israel... There was a tweet by, I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong, chat, but Brianna Joy Gray recently made a tweet saying that it's over, Israel has lost, and will soon be dismantled. Or in 20 years, there won't be an Israel. Perhaps it is my lack of imagination, but I don't see that to be the case at all. I don't think that this is going to... What this has done is it's put Israel in a corner. They have been backed against the wall. And I don't see it getting better. I don't see them going away. I see them getting meaner. I see them getting less cautious with their actions. I see more blood on the horizon, and that's a tragedy. Am I wrong? Am I wrong, gang? Am I incorrect? So tell me why. If so, tell me why. If so, tell me why. Oh, where'd my face go? There it went. Again, I'm adjusting things on the screen, and we're waiting for Brianna to jump backstage. And Brianna, if you're listening, once you jump backstage, I'll pull you in and we'll talk. And we can do your show, and it will be fun. She said 7. It's 7:02. She's late. It's okay. We got drinks, and we got the wonderful company of my guests. Hello, my fellows, right? Have you all been enjoying the content of late? We had some great shows this week. Did you guys see the Gamergate 2 stuff that we talked with Brianna and Short Fat Otaku, Tachyon Blue, and Soyaddle? We had that discussion Tuesday. It was a great discussion. I recommend you go through it and look at it. I think it's... I have since seen some comments by other interlocutors in this little fracas, if you will. Journalists aren't doing themselves any favors. Let's say that. Neither are the gamers. Both sides are getting weird. It's one of those things where you like, look, everyone seems to be talking past each other. And yeah. Luckily, Brianna's here, so I don't have to kill time anymore. Oh, hello.
There we go. We did it.
Took us a minute, but we got it done, gang. Thank you for saving me from killing time for the last 10 minutes. Good to see you. How are you?
Yeah, of course.
Having a good day?
Can you hear me, Wick?
Yes, hello? Can you hear me?
Excellent. There we go. Sorry about that.
It's okay. So, yeah, what do you got planned for us? Again, you said that you wanted some help, so I'm like, okay, let's bring her in. Let's give her some help. But I confess I'm not quite sure what we're doing. But you are here, and I'm gonna give the ball to you. The mic's to yours. Start us off. Let's go.
So I was going to stream with Connor tonight, and he unfortunately has kids, which can kind of cramp your style when it comes to streaming. And I didn't know if you were recording or not tonight. I wanted to ask you if you could jump on in and just sub in for him. And so I guess we're going to do it over here on WhickTV today. So.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate you reaching out. And like I said, you've helped me out lots before, so I'm absolutely always down to help you out. The only thing I was doing today was going over the Finkelstein debate with Destiny.
Yeah.
Did you see that? What are your thoughts?
I've seen like 3 hours of it, and look, Steven is a friend. I love Steven. He has, his document that he did preparing for this debate. He was kind enough to release this to the public. So I've actually gone through this like piece by piece and started to learn what I can from it. My impression of the first 3 hours is he's so much on the defensive. And I think it really shows it doesn't matter like how much you read. If you're going up against academics, like they've been neck deep in this stuff, reading primary sources for a long time. And it really kind of feels like they're having a conversation with each other as academics. And, he's sitting there and just kind of asking them pointed questions. So that's kind of my impression of it. How kind of do you feel?
So we saw the introduction, and then we skipped to the October 7th portion. So I didn't see the first 2 hours of the debate. I cannot comment on that. We were able to get to what, like 30 minutes? What do you guys think? 30 minutes or so of the October 7th section. My problem with the discussion is the pedantry involved.
Yep.
And I understand why they do this. I understand why it's the case. But it's frustrating because I feel like it misses the meat of the conversation,
Yes.
what we actually want to talk about. Because when, again, I think there was an incident where Destiny asks about how many were killed by civilian or by IDF and how many civilians were killed by Hamas, in their opinion. And the the kind of like verbal shields that
Mhm.
Finkelstein and his partner, whose name is escaping me at the moment, the verbal shields that they put up rub me the wrong way. Finkelstein says multiple times that he places value on his words, that he is very careful with how he phrases things, with how he words things, and I think that's very true. So when you are so careful with your word choice, when you are so particular with what you say, it does beg questions when you will not answer straight up a yes or no question or a very simple binary choice, and instead you say things in a way that allude to things that you don't come out and say it, but you allude to things. So he would say something like, even if it was just half that were killed by Hamas, that's still a horrific number. And yes, true, but that's not the question he asked you.
Yeah,
right?
I think he does that for the entire 3 hours I've managed to see so far. I also think, Wick, one of the things that makes this not approachable is I think Destiny has done a 10 out of 10 job at approaching this subject and making it accessible, right? Like, it got me to care about this like I've never cared about this subject before. And, it's like when you have three academics that are sitting there, they're having so much of a conversation with each other about sources and methodology, and you said this in this book, that it's like, for me, it's like, I don't give a damn about like an academic pissing match. I care about talking about the morality of this debate. The good news is when you get like 2.5 hours in, they start switching away from 1948 and kind of relitigating that to talking about, October 7th. And Destiny starts asking him really pointed questions about Hamas. It gets much better at that point. So there's better stuff ahead, I would say.
Okay, I guess I'll. I don't know if I'll watch the rest of it on stream, but I'm definitely going to watch the rest of it for my own edification. Yeah, I'm not even sure
something
how
I
my
want to
audience
talk
liked
to you
it,
about,
but please,
if we
go
can
ahead.
do that. So, did you see all the shit I got into with trans Twitter this week? Did
You are
you
going
see
to have
this
to be
much?
more specific when you say the shit that you get into with trans Twitter. You could be alluding to a whole bunch of different things. Please clarify for me.
I'm talking about trans Christian tradwives. So,
I did see that.
oh my God. Do you want to catch people up on this? Because it was a bananas start to the week this week.
So this is from my perspective, and please correct me if I'm wrong, right? You were in the shit much more than I was. I just saw it from the sidelines. I'm like, I'm not getting involved. So
But you were laughing about
it was funny.
Yes.
It was funny because it's just, we'll get into it, but I'm sure as we talk, I want to point out how just the ineffectiveness and it's indicative of why leftists are just never going to be in power. But anyway, let me catch my audience up here. So there was an individual, Punished Lexi, I believe was her name. Is that true? Is that correct? Someone of some infamy, not a very I do not endorse this person, okay? But they made a funny tweet.
I don't know who they are. I have no idea. I cannot keep up with the 30,000 shit posters of the trans cinematic universe. I just can't. I don't know who any of these people are.
100%, I understand. Because the tweet they made in isolation was just funny. It was a funny tweet about, and it had a picture of a like a trad traditional wife, like a good Christian traditional wife. And
can you give me permissions? I'll put it on screen right now for us.
Yeah, give me a second. Please do.
I don't mean to cut you off. I apologize.
No. This is better. Better than me describing it. Let me just show the audience. So yeah, you can put it on your screen. We can watch the stream. You can take us through, right?
There we go.
Here, give me a second. let me mute the volume. I don't think you need the volume for anything, right?
No.
Okay, show us what
So
you got.
this is the tweet. This is by Punished Lexi, and it's got a picture of like an anime girl in like Cinderella colors, like a beautiful white apron, a cross on the apron, and a cross around her neck. Right? She's got a beautiful bow in her hair, and Lexi says, "quote Trans women need to dash be traditional, worship Christ, submit themselves to their husbands." Not be lesbian or sexual to anyone but their husband. Disavow drag queens and non-binary freaks. Disavow, by the way. Keep their transness private. Only then will we assimilate and be accepted by society. So that is the tweet. Wick, what are your thoughts on that particular tweet?
It's ridiculous, but it's funny ridiculous. It's the kind of thing that people say that is just so out there that you laugh, you like, you move on, right? Ha ha ha, click, maybe retweet it, and then just don't think about it. Yeah, that's
so
fun.
My good friend Cass, who you know, and I'm sure you love too, because she's a lovely person, she was tweeting about this, and I read it, and I just clicked like. That's all I did. And then the proud members of WooAnon, who love to police my likes, went through, and WooAnon, like on trans Twitter, made a huge deal about this. What did Brianna mean by this? Is Brianna saying that all trans women should like be loyal to Christ and like move over to Christianity? Is this Brianna Wu saying we should disavow drag queens and quote non-binary freaks? We should not. That's not my message. But you know, they took this like into this entire narrative, and then WooAnon did what they do. So
for people who hate the police, they sure are loving to police your tweets. Okay, like for people who hate the cops, they sure are being little like police there, aren't they? I don't know.
Sure. Yeah. So Wick, you're a smart guy. I want to, because then my friend Aaron reached out to me. And, you know, we were talking about this, and I want to talk about the like kernel of truth that's here. That I've actually had a lot of discussion this week with a bunch of my trans friends about. And I think, you know, I'd love your opinion on this, but I think sometimes when we're talking about trans Twitter and leftist spaces, it's so focused on tear everything down, be punk rocker, rage against the machine, destroy gender, be a sex worker, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I want to be clear, like I'm a progressive, I love that stuff. I'm a punk rocker at heart. That's why I do what I do. But I also think that there's like a sliver of a message there that is telling trans people that are suffering from dysphoria essentially the ideology is the solution to their unhappiness. And I actually don't think that's true. I think that, you know, there are a lot of ways to treat gender dysphoria, but like waiting for a communist revolution with sex work everywhere is not going to be that. So I liked this tweet. Like, of course, I thought it was hilarious, but I also think there's like a kernel of truth there that you can just like strive for more normal things, like maybe not being a trad wife, but, you know, being married, you know, being in a monogamous relationship, like doing stuff like cooking your husband dinner, something I do, right? Do you have any thoughts about that?
A lot. Where to begin? There is a question, right? Do you want to be accepted by society, or do you want to fundamentally change society?
Right.
Now, I think that there are things that should be changed about society, absolutely. But for the average person, for the average trans individual, right? Not trying to speak for trans people, right? But part of the problems that they have come from society rejecting them.
Right.
So wanting to fit in, it's a very human thing. It's a very human thing. You want to be accepted by the people around you. You want to be loved. You want to be seen as a human being and things like that. It is counterproductive to go around saying that you want to burn it all down. If you want to be accepted, that's not how you get acceptance, okay? Now, again, we don't have to gain acceptance through throwing others under the bus. We don't have to do that. But simply by being I saw another tweet. I don't know if you saw this one as well. It was from a trans individual whose name escapes me at the moment. I'm sorry I can't give proper credit. But they say something to the effect of, the best trans advocacy is just being a normal fucking person and nice to those around you.
That's 100% true. Yeah, and I was talking to Aaron about this, and I fully agree with everything you said, Wick. It's hard for me not to notice that if you look at the origin stories of a lot of the supervillains that trans people are fighting right now, Elon Musk, why did he buy Twitter? Right? He got really angry at the misgendering policy, and then trans Twitter have been really mean to him for a long time. I think it's very well documented that, J.K. Rowling got radicalized against trans people because of a whole bunch of, frankly, abuse that she suffered for, frankly, some transphobic statements, right? And the exact same thing with Chappelle. So, look, anyone can go out there and look at my Twitter. I have no love for any of the three of these. I've gone after them more times than I can count. Wick, the first time we met, I was like literally calling for a boycott of Hogwarts
Yes.
Legacy because I felt so strongly about that. But I also think it's true that this particular advocacy, the trans Twitter version of advocacy, is not like doing the community any good. I think it's making enemies faster than it's making friends.
This is just correct, and it's not just trans spaces that are doing this. This is a problem all across the political spectrum on the left and the right. We can see it with how the journalists have been responding to some of the gamergators, right, that have been going on right now. I read a tweet today, which again was just, my eyes can only roll so far back in my head before they dislocate and just become like little cartoons spinning around.
You want me to put that on screen? Because I thought
Do you have it up? If you have it up, throw it up.
Give me just a second. You finish your thought.
Sure.
I'll pull it up for you.
But if you don't want to be seen as a villain, if you were mad that people were villainizing you, it would do everyone a favor if you stopped going on villain monologues like this person does, right? Like and again, when Short Fat Otaku, when Dev was telling me initially about the whole Sweet Baby Ink stuff, when he was going through that, most of the time I was sitting there, and I won't lie to you, I was like, I was only half paying attention because this sounds like nothing. Sounds like nothing. There's a company, another company hired this consulting firm to come in and help them with their character work and their dialogue and their stories and stuff. Okay, I don't care. I don't give a shit. And then he got to a point where I'm trying to remember exactly what he said, but it was something along the lines of, and then they called for a canceling and to get this guy's Steam account taken away because he made a list. And my ears perked up and I'm like, what? What? If they had done nothing and if they had just ignored it, we wouldn't be having these conversations right now, or at least the conversations would be far, far less. But they did themselves no favors. Instead of just saying nothing, they decided to call everyone who was out to, not only call everyone who had criticisms racist and bigots, but then engage a harassment campaign of their own, targeting this one fucking guy, right? Who I don't know. Maybe he's a bad guy. I don't know him, right? But it's just crazy. Anyway, what's the tweet you got up? You want to read the relevant parts?
This is from you, Wick's comment. Your comment is, if you all said nothing, this would be all less of a thing, dead on, but you keep seeing villain shit and then wonder why people think you're villains. It's a tweet from 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙𝖘𝖍𝖔𝖜, who's on his way to GDC. GDC is the biggest game development conference. It takes place at Moscone. I've been more times than I can count. And, he talks about some of the harassment that's going on with the Sweet Baby Ink thing. 100% true, 100% fair. And one of my criticisms of the panel we did the other day, Wick, is I don't think we covered that aspect of it enough, and we should have. This is hurting people. But then the part of this that's circled, and this is really important, and if by chance you happen to be working in this industry and you're voicing said opinions, I will screenshot you, I will put you on a person list, and advocate that you never work at a company I work for or be associated with. And that was your opinion on that. Do you want to kind of explain?
I
why
was
you thought
with
that was
him. I was
problematic?
with him until that point, right? Like, hey, no, if you're engaged in harassment, that's bad. Cut that shit
Yep.
out. That's wrong. And you are correct. Like, if you think that these reporters, that these game developers aren't getting harassment, you're full of shit, right? That's
Mhm.
absolutely happening. I've seen it happen. It's happening constantly, right? And it's probably elevated now that they're all in the spotlight again. Absolutely true.
Yeah.
However, the response to that should not be to do a little harassing of your own on the other way, right?
I fully agree with that. I think that's dead on. And I think that's a like criticism of the left. Coming back to the Christian Tradwife thing, I want to ask you, like, in all honesty, like, you are a straight cis dude. Tell me honestly. So do you think, and you're also a Christian, or at least you used to be a faith worker. Do you think if there was a segment of trans people that their desire in life or their goal was to have a more traditional marriage, be married to a man, I'll give you a really good example. My good friend Danielle, she married a man who had gotten divorced, and she adopted 3 stepchildren, right? And she's trans, and she very happily is raising those kids and being a stay-at-home mom. That was her dream, and she's doing that. Do you think how do you think like Christian communities would respond to that? Because I think there'd be a high level of acceptance by some people, for people that wanted to do that.
Well, I can only speak because I was raised Mormon, okay, which has very
Kind of
transgressive
hardcore,
views.
yes.
Transgressive views when it comes to homosexuality, when it comes to trans issues.
Sure.
Funnily enough, up until very recently, they were switched. They were much more homophobic than they were transphobic. Anyway, beside the point. I grew up in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. I remember the fight for homosexual acceptance on the wider stage, for gay and lesbian and bisexual acceptance, right? I remember how they won legislative victory after legislative victory, okay? Their messaging was, we're just like you. We're just like you. We're normal like you are. We want the same things you do. We want to have a family. We want to raise kids. We want that American dream. We want to be you. We're humans just like you. And then they got what they wanted, right? They won. Right. They won. And if you go and talk to Christians today, right? Not all Christians, but if you talk to like mainstream kind of Christians, even Mormons, right? They are much more accepting of that than they were 30, 20 years ago. Much more accepting, right? What is happening now, however, is not that. They have decided that, no, we're not like you. We are substantively different than you, and you need to treat us special in these ways. And that is, it's a problem. It's not going to win. It's not going to work. It's going to be counterproductive to what you want to have happen. If you want to be accepted by the community, you have to accept the community. It's a two-way street. What they are asking for, and a lot of trans Twitter, a lot of leftist Twitter, right? They're not asking for that. They want revolution.
That's right.
And that's different. And that's not, it's at odds with what the individuals want, right? And it's just, I don't know. Anyway, rant.
I mean, I do think there's a certain punk rock aspect that is inherent to trans people, right? Like, it's very, like, you can be gay and, like, keep that out of the workplace. It is harder to be trans and keep that out of, do you know what I mean? Like, you're more,
absolutely, it's more visible.
For many trans people, it's far more visible, right? So I do think that's an additional, like, complicating factor. And look, I know people are going to clip chimp this. I'm not suggesting that all trans people go out and become Christian tradwives. That's not my suggestion. What I'm suggesting is we have a lot of conversations in feminism about choice feminism, right? And if someone, like for me as a feminist, if someone wants to be a stay-at-home mom and raise kids and opt out of the workforce and be a Christian and have a family, that's her choice. That's the entire point of feminism. And then if I want to go have a career and not have children, that's my choice, right? Feminism is about the ability to make choices. And I wish there was a larger part of trans culture that was at least able to show like other things, because it feels like you've got software engineer and sex worker as the two primary like paths for trans people. And I think that's very limiting. You know, I want a world where trans people don't feel like they have to be activists necessarily, right? Though I realize that's survival for a lot of people. But, you know, I think this tweet is getting, I think it's funny, but I also think there's that little kernel of truth there that's worth talking about.
If I may ask, what were some of the primary criticisms you got? Can you just tell us a little bit about the response that you've received?
Yeah.
Can you, like, saying it's terrible is one thing, but can you kind of, I don't mean you to relive it or relitigate it, but I'm just curious.
So the inherent like criticism of this was like kind of a bad faith reading of this, and Brianna Wu is saying that she believes those things about like kicking out, you know, non-binary people from the trans movement. I don't agree with that. I think that's horrible. I think people that say that it's about their own insecurity. It was also like Brianna Wu is a former Trent Lott staffer. She's talked about her faith before. You know, she wants everyone else to be Christian too. I actually work very hard to keep my religion out of my public profile. Like if you ask me, I will tell you what I believe. I'm Presbyterian. So, you know, it's, you know, I don't make public policy like my own like faith. Right? I've never advocated that. You can spend your whole life looking, you're not going to see it. So it was kind of like reading this stuff into it, like I'm an enemy on this. And I don't think that's true. Does that kind of make sense?
It does. I think that they have, and this is a thing, again, that's not unique to this side of the internet. It's not unique to even to the left. But when people identify you as an enemy, they tend to contextualize everything you do within that kind of lens. And so when you liked that tweet, they saw it as an endorsement. And they could be very well honest. I don't think a lot of them were. I thought a lot of them were disingenuous in some of the responses I made. But many of them were just, this is how they believe. They see you as an enemy because you've been painted as an enemy. And so everything you do is seen through that lens. And that's it's an inability to escape their view of you, and it's a problem.
Yeah, I agree with that. So we've got Cipher backstage. Do you mind if we cue that up, Wick? Can I do
not
that?
Not at all. Right? Let's pull him in. Gang, this is Cipher from the Cipher Report. Let's get him on. Hello, you're live.
Cipher. We'll give him a minute. One of the things we were going to do tonight with Connor is I was going to talk with Cipher about Israel-Palestine. We kind of have a difference of opinion on all of this, and kind of wanted to hash it out. I was really interested in talking to him because he is he's a former military person. So I thought it would be good.
Okay.
Cipher, how are you doing?
We can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
Give it a minute, gang. This is all last minute, gang. I apologize. This was last minute. We're trying to make it work. Forgive us if it's sloppy, but hey, we're here. We're gonna have a great show. Oh, we had it for a minute.
One more try.
No.
It is just a comedy of errors tonight.
It's one of those days. Give him a minute. Like, it takes some time. Look, I'm a boomer when it comes to technology. Do you have push to talk or something? Maybe it's
Nope.
I know.
Oh.
It's not picking up on this.
It's picking up a little.
Yeah, you're clipping.
Like when you get close like that, it picks up some.
I can tell. Up some. It's
bad. That's bad.
I didn't kick him.
So, yeah, Wick, what did you think of Schumer coming out on the floor today, speaking of Israel-Palestine, and basically calling out Netanyahu? I haven't seen the whole speech yet, but as I understand, the gist of it is he's bad for Israel, and the Israeli people should push for new leaders. What was kind of your thought about that?
Based, right? Again, I
Yeah.
haven't seen the actual statement, so I reserve the right to change my opinion when I actually see the wording used. But again, the concept of holding Netanyahu accountable and getting better leadership for the Israeli people, something I've been for from before the war, right? It's something that they have needed for a long, long time. I think it's great that Biden is taking steps publicly to condemn Netanyahu for some of the things he's done, and to take steps that bypass Israel when it comes to getting aid to Gaza, like building a military pier. I think that's a great thing. Let's try Cipher again. Let's third time's the charm, right? Okay, just give it a minute. We'll get it.
Are you there, buddy?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you guys hear me now? It's
We
not
hear
showing.
you.
Yeah, the problem is when you drag me in, there it goes. It's like join voice, and it goes back to the backstage. And I hate Discord sometimes. No, I just had to close Discord out and come back in. It was something going on with that. So yeah. Now let me hit record on my end, and then we can get started. Sorry about that, everybody. Discord
Don't worry about
does not
it.
like to work.
Yeah, this is one of these nights. Like Connor's wife is sick. He's got sick kids. I didn't want to put you off because when you're a guest, and Wick was very generous to sub up, and then more generous to let us host it over here. So thank you for coming along.
Of course, no, thank
Yeah,
you
of course.
for tapping me here again. I'm not. I didn't do any prep work, so I'm going to basically step back and make sure that you guys don't yell over each other. That's my.
I don't think we're gonna do that. I don't
either, but
that.
you never know. So
I'm too cordial for that to happen. But I don't remember what the primary disagreement was. Go on.
Let's just get into it. So something I have always wanted to ask you is you served Cipher, which genuinely thank you. I am always really interested in people like you that, it's not, you don't read about this in the New York Times like I do. You've been out there actually implementing the policy that, people like me vote for. So it's easy for me to talk about national security. You've actually gone and put your life on the line for that, which I really respect. So I guess I wanted to just ask you really openly. You've come to a different conclusion on this conflict than I have. I was curious how, your service kind of may have shaped that.
Yeah, so just to give people an idea what we're talking about, of course, we're talking about Palestine-Israel conflict, and the disagreement we had is kind of what Israel should be doing. So to give full context and clarity to this, I was, and this is going to make a lot of lefties hate me, but I was an APG operator, which is Area Positional Guidance. Wick knows what that is. That is a drone. I did not pilot the drone, but I was controlling the box on it that helped find the terrorist and the Taliban and any other enemy that might have been in the area. So, but I was doing that mission in Afghanistan from 2014 to 2016.
Wow.
So I wasn't in Afghanistan the whole time. Some of that was remote. I was in Afghanistan for a year. So 2015 to 2016, I was in Afghanistan. And that was under the Obama rules when it comes to rules of engagement. So if people may not know this, but the rules of our engagement under Bush were kind of loose, we'll say.
Yeah.
There wasn't as much care about civilian casualties, that sort of thing. It was a really big thing blew up when Obama, during 2010, after the WikiLeaks came out with the whole collateral murder, which is a whole other debate that I don't want to get into, but this is what triggered it, where we had to tighten up rules of engagement because there was just too many civilians dying. And what the rules of engagement went to was that it doesn't matter how important the target is that you're going after, whether it's a capture mission, a kill mission, doesn't matter what the target is. If anything enters the proximity within 500 meters, abort. Didn't matter what it was. Could have been a dog, cow, a person, a bike. Didn't matter what it was. You called the mission off because they were trying to reduce casualties. Israel's not doing that.
No.
It's not doing that at all. And when our government says Israel's doing everything it can, it's doing things that we wouldn't do. Yeah, on the surface, maybe it's supposedly dropping leaflets to tell people, hey, we're about to bomb this building. But there's a active war zone.
Yeah.
They're not going to be able to escape the area in like 10 minutes. It's not possible because they don't know what areas are safe. You leave your apartment, you could be going, 100 meters away from that apartment and get hit by another bomb.
Right.
So what is safer to do? To stay in the apartment or leave?
Yeah. And to be clear, there was an article that came out about Israeli use of artificial intelligence, and basically
that's a whole.
To sum this up very quickly, they have artificial intelligence that looks at addresses, assigns a value of how likely Hamas is going to be there, and the number of civilians that they project are going to be could be killed with this. And they basically bump that number of acceptance, I believe, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, all the way up to 50, which was really
it's
surprising.
very high. It's very high.
Yeah.
Yes.
They not only did that, but they lowered the threshold for what would be. So they lowered the threshold of how many, or I'm sorry, they raised the what you just said. They also lowered the threshold of what is considered to be actionable. So not only you're saying that you're going to accept more collateral damage on the one hand, you're also increasing the number of valuable targets on the other by lowering what that threshold is.
Yeah.
The reason that they're, in my opinion, as a person that works with artificial intelligence, that for my job, I do machine learning, I do predictive analytics for my day-to-day job. The reason that they're using AI isn't because they're trying to process thousands of potential targets. They're using it as cover to do what they want to do anyways.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why Wick and I, before you got on, we're talking about how glad we were to see Schumer putting pressure on Netanyahu to leave. Though, to be fair, this is a broader problem with the war cabinet. Wick, I've always, because you served as well, I've always wanted to ask you the exact same question, because you, I think, have a generally more, I don't want to say pro-Israel, but you're certainly very, very anti-Hamas.
I am also.
How did you serving, how did that inform those values?
So I did two things in the service. Okay. The first thing I did was I was a cryptolinguist in a very short time, right? Not a lot of my career was that. And it was my target language was Mandarin Chinese, so I didn't deal with the Middle East stuff too much, right? The second thing I did was I was a maintainer. I basically worked on the KC-135 airframe and made sure that it was flight worthy. It wasn't anything like that. So those are the two things I did. However, right, again, I worked in the intelligence field and the maintenance field, which were two different fields. And again, you get a kind of a feel for the atmosphere in that. For me, the reason why I am less condemning of Israel than perhaps Cipher would be is I understand the differences in the situations that Israel is facing and that America faced in Afghanistan and Iraq and things like that. We were oceans away, right? Israel had just been attacked. 850 civilians have been murdered brutally by these people, right? By Hamas. And yes, they don't take enough care. But to act as if they have to engage in the same rules of war that America does, I don't think is fair. I think that it's okay, right, because of the way Hamas conducts itself, it puts those civilians in the way. It puts those civilians between the bombs and themselves on purpose, right? And this is one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons you see such high civilian casualty rates is because this is a tactic by Hamas. They do it on purpose, and because of the density of the area, right? You then get to the choice. If they don't go in militarily to strike these people, then what would you have them do? And I know I don't want to get too involved in this, right? But that would be my question to Cipher. If not what they're doing, right? Which I think we can all agree, it's over the top. They've committed war crimes since October
Yeah.
7th. I will
Yeah.
cop to that 100%. But the concept of what they're doing, I don't think that there's anything particularly wrong with killing your enemies in this case.
Sure. Well, I don't. Sorry, I'm gonna let Brianna can handle this what she wants to do for this conversation.
But
So
it's a great question. I mean, I'd love to know that. I mean, it's kind of a different theater too. I mean, I don't know where in Afghanistan you operate, or if you can even tell us. But
I was in 𝕵𝖎, but I was in the air. a lot.
Okay. Well, I mean, as far as where you're doing UAV missions, like was it over an urban area when you're talking about Cal wandering out into the AO?
It was Waziristan and Kabul,
Okay, so
Kandahar.
major cities.
I was well,
Fair
no,
enough.
Waziristan's the mountains.
Sure.
That's where the Taliban like to go hide at. So I was when I was in the air. So the only time I left the wire was when I was on the plane,
Mhm.
helping with the visual mission, as well as
Sure.
being a second set of eyes for the people that are interpreting what the camera is seeing, as well as
Sure.
controlling the box.
But my question is, like, was this an urban warfare situation?
It was both.
Okay, right.
We literally,
Yeah.
in one mission, and I can say this because it's loose enough that it shouldn't get me in trouble. One
Mhm.
mission, we literally kidnapped somebody out of the middle of Kabul
Wow.
with the Brits.
Wow.
So, yeah. So to kind of put this kind of where I'm at in perspective about what I
Please.
think Israel should be doing. So first things first, the mass movement of people from the north to the south, from northern Gaza to southern Gaza, shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have been a mass movement of people. What should have happened is that they presumably controlled the area that was just outside of Gaza, where they're invading from, and the northern tip of Gaza, right?
Mhm.
Presumably, we can say that we don't know how long it took them to get operational control. We don't know that stuff, right? So what they decided to do was mass move people to southern Gaza, where they planned and always had planned to invade. And then once they invade, they're going to move them back north, which is going to cause devastation. It's going to cause loss of life, injury, all that stuff because you're running through rubble, all that. So instead of doing that, presumably they could have set up a camp of some sort, a refugee camp, a civilian core camp with UN or somebody else, just in the entrance to northern Gaza and that little part of Israel that they invaded into. Now, whether or not that's feasible as far as like landmass and stuff like that, I don't know. I don't know if that's feasible 100%. But it seems like a hell lot of better idea than bombing the fuck out of northern Gaza, telling people to flee south, then starting to bomb southern Gaza and telling them to flee back north and saying, good luck to you. All right. So that's one. The second thing is that the way that they're conducting their bombing operations is that anytime a rocket is launched, and this has been what they've done forever, like this is prior to October 7th. They were doing this stuff when they were actively engaged with Hamas and other militant groups prior to October 7th, is that if a rocket is launched from a building, that building is considered a Hamas site and is bombed.
Yeah.
These are mobile platforms. These are people with rockets on their backs, launching rockets or having, basically rocket tubes. So they're highly mobile. They're cheap, whatever. Launching from like any kind of building they can think they can get the directory of to hit in Israel. So that building is marked for destruction. They bomb that building.
Yeah.
You're not actually killing Hamas. Once that rocket is launched, they're gone. They're not setting up bases there. That's not where their bases are. Their bases are not these buildings where they're launching most of their rockets from, because they're mobile. They're launching them from like hundreds of buildings, like different buildings all the time.
And no.
So why would you buy that bundling?
Yes and no. That's mostly correct.
Yeah.
The problem
so
is,
if it is a Hamas base, that's different.
Well, it's
but
not
I'm
even
saying
have
that
to
a lot
be a
of
base, but I've seen footage, right, of them, because what they do, especially after October 7th, the way they operate is they have planes in the air, and when the launches start, they target it. We have seen the number of rocket attacks from the beginning of this conflict just drop to almost nothing because they've been so successful in killing off these mobile platforms and the people watching these rockets. It's working, right? They are reducing it to almost nothing.
But they're mobile. So you're targeting
Yes.
buildings. You're targeting buildings with hundreds of civilians in there due to density, right?
But
Most of these are apartment
time
buildings.
that they are like, you are acting as if this is minutes or
Doesn't-
hours after. It is simultaneously in many, not all cases.
I don't care.
You don't care. So
I
you can
frankly
think,
don't care.
if I have if I have one civilian in my home, and I'm shooting at you from that home, right? I'm shooting rockets.
It is you're making the analogy not work because we're talking about bombs. You can be more precise with a returning of fire. You cannot be precise with dropping bombs on targets. You can be precise as like this building is going to be destroyed, but you can't be precise to the individual that's the only person you're going to kill. Now, yes, Hamas is doing this on purpose to increase the casualty rates that Israel does. Israel could also not do it, and it wouldn't hurt their operational capacity in order to go after who they're going
It
after.
absolutely
It
would
could,
hurt their operational capacity.
not as much.
Absolutely.
Not as much as creating more terrorists in the future by killing hundreds of people that
Do
are
you think
innocent.
that's what?
They're
Do you think
not
that a lot of
actively
these
engaged.
terrorists are being radicalized now? They're already radicalized. Like this isn't something that they
Future
need
generations,
to be radicalized on.
future generations are going to be radicalized because of the Israeli response. That is what we know from every counterinsurgency effort that has been done throughout all of time. That wasn't in a
That's just not
campaign to
true.
win hearts and minds.
But that's
That
not just
happened in
not
the
true.
Philippines.
Look at how many people, how many middle class, right? How many middle class people participated in ISIS and the Taliban and all these other groups. They were middle class. They weren't poor, starving people, individuals. Yes,
Who
there was
said
some of
anything
that.
about poor and
but a lot
starving?
of
If your
them-
dad dies and you're a middle class, you're going to be fucking pissed at the person that kills your father. It doesn't matter what class you come from. That's how people get radicalized. They get radicalized because they see the oppression that's being done to them and their people. And if they're of means, they're going to come up with some sort of philosophical reason of why this is doing it. So with Al-Qaeda, ISIS, etc., it's like the Jews, it's America, the great Satan. Like they're going to rationalize this because they're smart and they can do this stuff. But the foot soldier's gonna be like, I'm gonna go kill the people that killed my family. I'm gonna go kill the people that are oppressing me. That's what's gonna happen.
It does seem to me, like one of the lessons I took from the war on terror is you can't like fight terror by fighting a war that creates terrorists. And you know this firsthand, Cipher, if you participated in Afghanistan, because our directions directly led to ISIS, right? I don't know if you worked with like the battle to,
No, I wasn't participated in Iraq. I joined late. So I joined when I was 26, 2011 or so.
I'm talking more about like the Obama era spent a lot of time cleaning up ISIS all around the globe. We had a lot of conflict because of that. And we created a war that created terrorists and ended up destabilizing the region. So I'm really amenable to that argument that you're making. I think where it falls apart, and Wick, this is why I'm so glad you're here, because you do have that military background and I don't. I'm just gonna be straight with both of y'all. When I was running for Congress, I had no intention of telling anyone in the military how to do their job. I don't know shit about bombing tactics. I don't know anything about urban warfare other than what I've seen on 24. I feel completely unqualified to say, is this tactic good or bad? Though the rounding up of civilians and sending them to Rafah Pass, and now deciding to invade Rafah, this just makes no sense to me. So I will grant you that. This is where I think it would give you a little bit of pushback here. And there's a pattern if you really start looking into the history of conflict with Israel-Palestine that I've noticed. And that is when the Palestinians have a leader who is focused on peace, and talking about peace as the primary tactic for winning, this is where the international community kind of comes behind them. The humanitarian case to supply things and help Palestine become their own state is very straightforward. It's very compelling. And this is where it seems like they've made gains. The opposite of this is also true, that when you respond to Israel with violence, they have learned the lesson that they have to respond with overwhelming force. It was true with Egypt. It has been true so many times with the history of warfare in this region. It was true with the Arab League. And it was so predictable this is where it's going to go. So I'm not defending Israel coming in and flattening Gaza. It's very hard to look at those pictures. But I'm also completely unsurprised that that's how Israel responded, because it's what they've done every single time it's happened throughout their history.
there's no surprise here. As soon
Right.
as October 7th happened, there are multiple people I had conversations with on Twitter, in Discord, everything. I was like, ethnic cleansing is going to be the response here. Bibi is going to ethnically cleanse Gaza. They're going to do everything that they can to reoccupy Gaza, make it because one, that's what Bibi wants anyways. Bibi wants all of Israel to be controlled by Israelis.
And 𝕵𝖍𝖎𝖙, who is a literal
and
terrorist as
𝕵𝖍𝖎,
well. Yeah.
𝕵𝖍𝖎 wants that too, right? So that was going to be the response, right?
Sure.
Fuck Hamas. I don't give a shit about, like, Hamas can go jump off a cliff and kill themselves. I don't care. I'm sorry, this is violating Twitch chat.
Oh,
So
come
either
on,
way,
man. My channel, buddy. But go ahead.
sorry. I stopped streaming. So I
can
forget
say
sometimes.
that. I think you can say that about
It's fine.
terrorists.
It's fine. Hamas can go
I don't
away,
know, I don't
and
know.
everybody would
Yeah.
be better off for it, right? But we at the same time, we have to look at what Israel has done in order to prevent a two-state solution from ever materializing. So if we go back to when we don't want to go, we can go back to when Hamas won the election with a plurality, right? Israel decided that, hey, this isn't good for anybody. Let's arm and fund Fatah. U.S. did this too. I think Britain did it as well. And they created a civil war, creating a massive destruction within Gaza. They all of Fatah got pushed back to the West Bank. Everything, it was a complete civil war, complete shit show.
Hold on.
All right.
That's not what happened. That's not what happened. So after the election, where Hamas run like I think 40%, 46%, right? What they did was they a year later they performed a coup and they threw them off the buildings. The Fatah was pushed back because they threw them off the buildings. This wasn't like this counterinsurgency that is Israel and America funded, right? This was Hamas, and this is a problem I'm having with these.
That's not what I was saying.
Narratives, right? This is a problem.
Not what I was saying.
Is that we blame Israel for this, right? When it was Hamas.
I wasn't blaming Israel for it.
It certainly sounded like it, sir.
Yeah, because you wanted to jump in. So Hamas did start throwing people off buildings. Okay, like you said, I'm not going to deny that. I'm not saying that Israel and America are the great Satan. I'm not a fucking idiot progressive. Okay. What did happen though is that after that started, because Fatah didn't want to give up power, they were not agreeing to do the whole to give up power, so that caused the civil war after a year of bickering about it. After that happened, we funded the civil war.
Yeah,
that's what happened between Fatah and Hamas. I'm not saying that is necessarily bad that we did that, but it's what happened.
Sure.
Fast forward to 2012, right? 2012, there was a detente between Fatah and Hamas. They actually started to come together and talk about how the PLO should represent all Palestinians, how we should have a state, how Israel should recognize the right of Palestinians within its territory, as well as recognize the sovereignty of the Palestinian areas. So that include East Jerusalem. We know there's issues with that. Included Gaza, included the West Bank. Okay. After that happened, a spat happened between Hamas and Israel. We don't know exactly who started it. There's conflicting reports from multiple people. There's conflicting reports from Hamas, there's conflicting reports from Israel and the UN, and nobody knows exactly what started that fight. After that fight happened, we got it went on for like 2 years. Roughly. It might have been like 16 months. It was some time. There was fighting, then there was a ceasefire, and then there was a broken ceasefire, then there was more fighting, and then there was what ended up happening as a ceasefire, right? Afterwards, Bibi got back into power. And when Bibi got back into power, he's like, our number one job is to prevent a two-state solution from ever happening. The way that they did that, they said that. The way that they carried it out is that every time that Abbas went and gave Israel any information about terrorists, whether it be terrorists within the West Bank or Gaza, they were like, thanks, buddy, here. Thanks, we're going to go get them. They went and got them. And then they said, hey, we're also going to take over this territory. We're also going to take this house. We're also going to support the settler. Every single time. And at the same time, they allowed money to funnel in from Qatar and other Arab nations into Gaza, into Hamas's hands, and built up Gaza. They weren't doing a trading land for peace. They weren't doing a trading money for peace. They were specifically going about this in order to prevent any coalition from being built by Hamas and Fatah in order to.
Netanyahu has to go. I agree with you. There's nothing you.
It's not just Netanyahu though. Because
it is
a lot,
and that whole type of thing. I get you. Yeah.
Okay, so it's
wait,
roughly.
Hold on for a second. I don't know. This is the thing, though, and this is the part of this that I keep getting stuck on, right? It is not surprising that Israel has moved way towards the right wing since since this second intifada, right? It is completely unsurprising. And the part of this that never seems to get brought up is the terrorist attacks that the Israeli civilians are living under.
We're talking about the 95
nonstop.
bombings, right?
I'm talking about everything. I'm talking about the fact that if you were Israeli, my freaking dermatologist was telling me about how she's Israeli. She was there a few weeks ago and she's just visiting her family, and then whoop, phone starts going off. Get the app, rockets are incoming, and she's got to go run into the stairwell or one of the civilian bomb shelters. Tell me the truth. If here in America, if Boston was like under rocket attack for decade after decade of civilians being targeted by this, do you not think that the Republicans would have a lot more power? Like, this is the cycle of violence, right?
Well, yeah, but if we're gonna go into the cycle of violence, then we have to acknowledge everything that Israel's done to perpetuate it. So prior to the 95 bombings, West Bank encampments expanded. There was a murder of a Palestinian child, and that person
100%.
was not prosecuted. And that is what
I
kicked
can't
off of it.
defend. I would never defend the West Bank. Yeah, 100%.
So that's
agree.
what we're. So if we're going to talk about the systemic issues that are facing Israel and Palestine, we have to talk about the systemic issues. We can't just be like, well, of course Israel is going to do this. Yes, Israel's going to do it, just like Hamas or Fatah or the PLO is going to respond in kind every time that they are oppressed. I'm not saying that either side, no side is blameless here. Both sides are fucking terrible. Hamas is a piece of shit. Israel government under any right wing, even right of center in this regard, because of what Israel represents to right of center Israelis, is going to be bad. They're both bad, right?
Let's not flatten it this, though. We can recognize that as bad as Israel is, there is no moral equivalence between Hamas
That's right.
and Israel. Like, I hate this flattening that we do. And I don't mean to double.
Is it a
you.
flat?
It is. Hold on. Just if I may. This flattening of things. We look at how Hamas conducted themselves in the recent conflicts, and we look at how Israel conducted themselves, and we can say that there's condemnation to be had on both sides. I'm with you there, but they are different levels of condemnation, right?
That's right.
I don't think they are. And the
Hamas
reason
attacked. Hold on, if I may.
Yes.
On October 7th, Hamas struck at both military targets and civilian
Yes.
targets. The military targets they struck first in order to prevent the military targets from being able to respond to their true goal, which is to kill the Jews, to kill every single Jew they could get their hands on and take hostages, right? The military
goal was
targets were
200
only
hostages.
struck in order to pursue that goal, right? Now, we can condemn Israel because they strike targets that are military in nature, but civilians are around and it's way more collateral damage. But the goal is to kill Hamas. It is not to kill the civilians.
I don't
and
agree
these are
with that.
not
That's the problem.
comparable.
That's the problem. That is the fundamental disagreement that we have. I do not believe for a second that Israel actually gives a shit about any Palestinian living in Gaza. And
Their
the reason
behavior
they believe that
belies
Their
your
behavior-
statement. You may not believe
does
it,
not.
but the behavior
does
that
not.
they engage in, you can
Here's
say it
why.
does not engage. It's not enough, but it's much more than Hamas. It's much more care than Hamas has taken. You agree with
Here's
that?
why. Here's why I say
You don't
that I
agree
don't.
with that.
No,
Okay.
I don't agree with it. We can fight on this all day. I don't care. I want to get past it. All right. So the reason why I don't believe that is because of the way that Israel has conducted itself. It's done in such a way in order to keep a modicum of Western support so that it can pursue their actual goal, which is to ethnically cleanse Gaza. That is what their leadership has said. The leadership, 𝕵𝖍𝖎, finance minister, Bibi has also said this in somewhat ways, but not as clear as they have, that they want the Palestinian population in Gaza to be at a manageable level so that when they occupy it, they're not as much in danger. They want them to go to Gaza. Now, and the reason I also say this is because I need to finish this point.
Well,
I need
let
to
him
finish this point.
finish, then we'll get to you, Woo, Brianna. I'm sorry. We'll get to you. Don't worry.
In I want to say it was 2018, so it was during the last spat before this one. There was a documentary put out by Frontline called "Bibi at War," and it explained Bibi's entire philosophy from his 2 terms or 3 terms at the time. I think it was 3 terms at the time, prime ministership, and it explained how he rose to power, everything. It made multiple quotes of what he said. And in those multiple quotes, Bibi said that the Arabs have already got their second state, and it's Jordan. And any Palestinian doesn't want to live under Israeli occupation or Israeli control should just move to Jordan and get the fuck out of Israel. That is Bibi's number one goal, is to put all of Israel, which includes the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem, under Israeli control, both militarily and civilian-wise, and to keep the Palestinian population in check, as well as to keep the Arab population that is within Israel as citizens to a level that they can maintain their ethnic majority in Israel. That is the goal. Everything that Bibi has done so far in this war and past wars has been done in such a way to promote that. That's why I don't believe it.
Okay, I want everyone watching this to note because I respect you, I want to be friends with you, but I think you just pulled a slippery trick. And that is, this is what always happens. Y'all reach and you'll go to some diary or some speech or some individual instance, and you'll find it and you'll apply every bit of that to all of Israel. And the truth is,
I'm applying it to the right.
Hold on. You gotta let Brianna finish.
Yeah.
I let you go interrupted. I'm gonna let Brianna go interrupted. Go ahead.
There's the actual policy of what Israel is actually doing. And let's be really, really clear. Like, Israel, if they wanted to conduct a genocide, like an actual genocide against the Palestinians, could do that very, very easily. I have no doubt there are people there that want to ethnically cleanse Palestinians and force them to go to Jordan. I can't, because 𝕵𝖎𝖙 is in the cabinet. But the truth is, we had Stephen Miller in Trump's cabinet, and I reject this idea that the United States is like a completely white supremacist country because of that. You cannot attribute and make these blanket statements about what an entire country wants because of one individual speech or something that they've said. You've got to look at the policy. And this is what I really find slippery, because you can go to the goddamn Hamas charter, and it's right there in the charter. Their goal is genocide. Their goal is actual genocide, to wipe Israel off the map and to get every one of those Jews to either die or go live elsewhere. And then the evidence on your side is you're like, someone said this in a diary or a speech.
It's not a diary
it's
or
not
a speech.
the same. It's not the same thing. There's no policy to do that.
The literal Likud charter has from the river to the sea in it.
It's a political
That is what we're
party.
talking about. I didn't ever say that Israel's... Okay, if I said Israel's goal, I should say
Certainly
right-wing Israeli goal.
Sure. Okay,
So
we agree on that.
I'm not saying that all of the Israelis in Israel are evil Zionists. That's stupid. And that's why I don't like these discussions, because sometimes they go off the rails like this. I am being very specific. I said the Israel's goal right now, I didn't say right now, but Israel's goal right now is what's been done. And that is what Bibi has said. That's what 𝕵𝖎𝖙 said. That's what the finance minister said, whoever the hell his name is.
Israel's
There are multiple
goal,
people.
to be clear, right now is ethnically cleansing Gaza. You think that the October 7th operations
I do.
is
I
to
do.
ethnically
I
cleanse
believe.
Gaza?
I believe that Bibi's goal is to keep
Okay, we're
the
talking
Gaza
Israel.
population. Bibi represent. Okay, so if you're saying
Democracy
if
over
I
there, as I understand it, correct? It's a
we can argue
parliamentary
about that later.
democracy.
Sure, if you want. I mean, technically, it's an illiberal one.
And much like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is a member of our democracy, right, does not get to dictate.
There's
even when
different.
she has big levels of power, right? We can recognize that there are people within the IDF.
Okay, so when
who
Stephen
hate
Miller was
Netanyahu,
within,
right?
When Stephen Miller was inside the Trump administration and designing his policies for the detention centers within the southern border states, that was the government's policy at the time, even if that was not everybody within the government to do so. Do we agree with that?
But again,
that is how I'm trying to frame this.
Sure. What behaviors, right, that the IDF is doing currently, right? Because if
the
you
bombing,
look at behaviors, that
the
bombing is
refusal
to kill. What they're saying
Yes,
is we want to
I
kill
am
Hamas and get them out of power. That's what they're saying.
know.
That's the
I know
official
what they're
policy.
saying. I know what they're saying, but their actions say otherwise.
What do
The
you mean?
bombings The mass movement of people that I brought up at the beginning of this, the fact that they're not letting any Palestinians within Israel proper, even though, like I said, that makes sense. That makes sense to a degree, but they could have, like I said, they could have at the beginning of the program. I said they could have set up the camp from in the north rather than in the south where they're planning on bombing, and then go back to the north where they're also planning on bombing. Like there's things they had not let aid trucks in. The Israelis, right-wing Israelis, their version of Nazis right now are sitting in front of the supply trucks to enter northern Gaza and trying to prevent them from entering northern Gaza. Okay. So we can talk about this. We can talk about this all day. At the end of the day, the Israeli policy right now is not just to destroy Hamas. It is to destroy Hamas, reoccupy Gaza, put it under Israeli control in some fashion. Okay. And multiple times they've said, go to Egypt, get out, leave. We don't want you here. And they've done everything that they could to try to make that a reality.
Egypt doesn't want them, and that is not
happening. I know. Egypt does not want them. And then Egypt is not blameless here either. Sure. They're putting up a wall that is preventing people from fleeing when they start the Rafah campaign.
I hear what you're saying.
I'm not a progressive like the other people.
So I have a different assessment here. And, I think actually you're in a unique position to, maybe even if you don't agree, to at least understand it. I don't think Bush really had a super strict plan with Iraq or Afghanistan. I think that, you saw Wolfowitz and Bremer and what was his name? Rumsfeld and all of them basically just trying to manage this war every day. They got into it, and it was an absolute, I hope I can I say cluster F on your show, yes. Wick? I don't know. It was an absolute clusterfuck top to bottom. One day they're putting up Bremer walls, like these giant concrete things all through Iraq. They're dealing with bombings, then they do debathification, which is blowing up. Bush doesn't know the difference in Sunnis and Shiites. It's absolute chaos. And there's a lot of criticism of Bush there, and it's utterly fair. But I also think to a certain extent, this is the fog of war. And I think a lot of these situations are adapting. And I have no doubt that as they've tried and have not been super effective at killing Hamas or getting the hostages home because of Netanyahu's failed leadership, I think they're sitting there and going, okay, what's the next step? Okay, now we're going to invade Rafah. And I think you've got people like 𝕵𝖎𝖙 there. They're talking to Netanyahu. It's like, this would be a good time to whittle this Palestinian population down to a bare minimum. And then I think Netanyahu is looking at the reality like, geez, I've got the United States. They are really turning against us here. I'm really unpopular. If I get thrown out of office, I'm definitely, going to face some really serious charges and possible prison. I don't think there's any grand strategy. I think it's identical to Iraq, and it's just a clusterfuck.
I agree with that too. Go ahead.
Well,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
It's your show.
Yeah, I don't mean to double team you or anything like that, but I think
I don't know. I can take it.
Fair enough. Before you came on, we talked about, or I talked about a little bit what was happening with Brianna and what was happening in leftist Twitter instead. And one of the comments I made that I think is applicable to this conversation is we become stuck in our lenses, unable to see things outside of the lens that we have decided on. Brianna was seen as an enemy by trans Twitter, and so everything she does, everything she likes, every action she takes is seen through that lens. It can only be explained through that lens to people like that. When you came on and you said, again, you were having discussions with people on October 7th, like exactly when it happened, that this is going to be ethnic cleansing. What I think is happening here is you've got trapped in that same lens. So everything that happens, everything that's done, everything that everyone takes is seen through that lens. It's ethnic cleansing. Look, this proves it. Look, this proves it. Look, this proves it. And I think that we have to escape that kind of lens, because that's
sure.
I mean, if all you got is a hammer, everything looks like starts to look like a nail. And I think that's what's happening here.
I
Anyway, go ahead,
I
respond.
mean, that's a fair critique if everyone's got bias, but when you're right, you're right. That's where I'm going to go with that because I've predicted a lot of things before and it ends up being correct. Now, I've also said that I don't think that Israel's going to actually go through with all of it because its economy can't take it. The buildup of troops with the calling of their version of the National Guard, the reservist forces, have drained the economy of resources. So they can't go on much longer. They got maybe 2 months. 2 months left, and I said that at the time that if they don't have it the operation completely done by what did I say? Can't remember exactly what I said. I've adjusted my timelines a couple of times, but it's probably April that they would be done by July, and I'm still sticking to that. I think they will. I think this will be over by July, and if not sooner than that, because their economy simply cannot take it. It doesn't have the resources to have that level of buildup still. Now, as far as like the ethnic cleansing stuff is concerned, the propaganda that they're putting out is kind of in that line as well. They're showing like, people partying it up. Now, this could be just honestly just be like, look, you have no chance of winning. We're sitting in hot tubs while we're calling for a fire for effect, bitches, and having bombs go through, right?
So
that could be
I
some
want
of
to
that
ask
too.
a clarifying question because so many of these terms, it's like terrorism. What precisely does terrorism mean? Like when I say
Okay, yeah, sure.
terrorism, I try very strictly to talk about countries that, like a large number of Western countries have officially put on terrorist lists, right?
Mhm.
I think ethnic cleansing to a certain extent means this too. When you say Israel is engaged in quote unquote ethnic cleansing, can you get really granular with what your
Yeah.
charge is?
So basically, my opinion on this is that Israel's goal is to not necessarily remove every single Palestinian from all of Gaza. That's not realistic, right? But their goal is to have as few Palestinians as they can to create operational control of Gaza, to make it to where their soldiers are going to be somewhat safe when they attempt to rebuild it in whatever image it is, right? I argued with people on the other side. I did not want to call this genocide because I don't think Israel's goal is to completely wipe out Palestinians as a people. I don't think that that's the goal. I think the oppression is clearly the goal, and they want to have it as manageable levels, but they're not going to literally try to put people into trains to put them in camps.
Okay,
right?
if you're saying
That's
that
not
they're
what
going to
Israel's going to do.
occupy Gaza, I don't think I disagree. I just don't think that's
No, but in
cleansing.
order to occupy it, they want to push as many people out of Gaza as possible because they don't want to have those people there. So that is why I say and the reason that I bring up Bibi's history on this is because this is what Bibi has said countless times, publicly, privately, to other people. It doesn't you can find all of these things. That's why I said go watch the documentary Bibi at War on Frontline, because this is stuff that is out in the open. It's not just like, oh, he said his diary here and his father did this, although there's some of that in there, but there's statement after statement after statement of this being the goal. Recently, he just said from the river to the sea, Palestine will be Israel, or something to that effect. It wasn't that exact translation because I think it was in Hebrew, but it was the same thing. And that's the Yakud's goal.
So can I politely ask, just a little bit more turn taking for other people here? I hear what you're saying about this. I think I have no doubt that this is going to end with some percentage of Gaza occupied, right? I think, and look, this may be my bias because, like Wick said, I think sometimes we go into things. I go into this, and I will be honest. I think this talk about Israel being evil, or the Israeli people being genocidal or whatever, I just don't think that's true, right? I think they're a flawed democracy, very similar to ours. But there's this long historical pattern of Israel, someone frankly attacking Israel, just like October 7th, and them going in and having a military operation, and then the dust settling and kind of giving some of that land back. And what I hope is going to happen is I assume all three of us here agree that the West Bank settlers are absolutely untenable. This situation absolutely has to change. Maybe some of the ground that they capture could be used as land swaps, right? And Israel agrees to have this territory move and it's part of Israel from now on. And, the West Bank, they give up those settlements in the West Bank and they get like beautiful, very well developed places to live. I think there's an aftermath to all of this that historically it's very likely to happen. And I don't think we can like judge today what that is going to look like. Does that make sense to you?
No, it does. And what the United States has been engaged in, this is where the progressives are going to get mad at me. What the United States has been engaged in with holding Bibi close, with Biden holding him close, giving them weapons, making sure that they get aid, being 100% backing, is they're trying to have leverage. We're still trying to maintain the leverage that we have over Israel to get the policy that we want for the day after. If Biden, and Biden said on no certain terms, don't commit war crimes. Like, hey, October 7th was bad. We get it. Don't fall for the trap we did, right? And if you do, it's going to be bad for you, and we're going to have to readdress our policy. We slowly started seeing that, right? The reason he's doing that is because if he did anything else, if he did what leftists want, there would be no leverage. The United States would have no leverage. They would lose all support that they have, even among the modicum of leftist Israelis that exist. And I don't mean like leftists in the sense of Israeli left-right politics. I mean leftists that people in the rest of the West would say are leftists. Like, they would lose support with those people, because when a terrorist attack happens like that, it galvanizes the entire population. And this is especially true for Jewish people. Entire population to fight back, because it is an existential threat to their very existence. And with Jewish people, that is abundantly true. And you have similar things happen in the United States. Native Americans had a similar thing happen. Black people had a similar thing happen. Like, that's what's going to happen, right? Black Wall Street got destroyed. What did black people do? They reassessed. They moved places. They went to where they had some stability and set up there until they were able to rebuild and go back to whatever place that they ended up moving to afterwards, right?
Yeah.
So if we did anything, we'd lose leverage. I got a little bit off track there, so I'll stop.
No. It's really well said. Wick, can I, just to bring you into this a little bit, like, do you think, are you generally happy with the pressure that America has been putting on Israel? Because from my point of view, especially in a historic context, it seems to be, I think it's extraordinary. I think maybe very young people may not appreciate just how nuanced what Biden has been doing is. But I think we've been doing things just about right. What are kind of your thoughts on that?
Certainly. So again, I'm not privy to the backroom talks, the backroom deals, and things like so. I can only make assumptions based on what I've seen, both rhetoric-wise and policy-wise, and the leaks that have come out, right? I don't know if you remember, but during the State of the Union address, Biden was caught in the on hot mic, basically, telling some of the other politicians there that he and Netanyahu were going to have a come to Jesus moment, right? That they really needed to kind of hash these out. I agree with both you and Cipher in that I think that Biden specifically wants to keep that leash on Netanyahu, right? And I think it's important that we do keep connections with Israel, because they are our allies, like it or not. They are our allies. They help us, we help them, right? And I think that Biden's willingness to call out Netanyahu, to push for Netanyahu to extend that initial deadline. If you remember at the beginning of the war, he said, you guys got a day to leave the area from Gaza. Biden, again, was responsible for getting that pushed back. Instead of a day, it became weeks, right? He's also responsible for getting some of the utilities turned back on into Gaza. So, yes, I am happy to answer your question with Biden's response for the most part. There's a couple things, but they're niggly, nitpicky kind of things, so.
I mean, Cipher, do you agree with that?
I think, like I said, I think it's, I don't know what right looks like and what Biden should do necessarily. I like Wick, I don't have all the privy information. I do think that he's doing stuff that is in that realm where I said trying to maintain leverage, trying to have it for the day after. I do think that it's not leverage over Bibi though. It's leverage in Israel in general. And I think we've been telegraphing to Israel that what has happened is too much, and Bibi and his government and the people that are to his right cannot be in charge after the day after. And that Schumer, was it today? I think it was today.
It was
Schumer,
today. Yeah.
Schumer said that, Bibi's basically got to go. Schumer's got a lot of pull within the Jewish community. Like he really does. Especially among the New Yorkers, and where's some of the American Israeli PAC people? Well, they're in New York, so I don't think he would say that if AIPAC wasn't on board with that as well. To be honest with you,
Yeah.
so I think that to be honest with you, unless Bibi can be successful in what his ultimate goal is, I think he's gone. I don't think he's maintaining power. And it's not just because of what he's done with Gaza. Like, there's a lot of people in Israel that don't like it. There's not enough of them, right? I think a lot of people are, I'm sorry. Yeah, I said that right. A lot of people in Israel don't like what happened in Gaza, but it's not a majority. But they don't like the intelligence failure. They don't like he was trying to stack the courts. They don't like he was trying to change what the judicial system was. They don't like the threats to their version of democracy. So I think that he's done. And as soon as this is over, the United States and the UN and probably Britain, and if I had to guess, Australia, will come together with intelligence to show where the failures actually were. And it will be a hammer that we can use to, again, for more leverage within Israeli politics.
Yeah, and I think that's really well said. I agree with that. And I think I'm certainly not trying to minimize your statements at the beginning of this, but just speaking more broadly, yeah, there's a lot of talk out there, like trying to frame all of this in like highly moralistic terms, right? Like, what is the intention of Israel? What does Israel want to do? And maybe this is just my own bias because I work in policy. But it's like, I see this as a political problem that is ongoing and is being worked out, right? I really rarely ascribe any politician as being good or evil. I think that for the most part, they're kind of self-interested people that go to where they will get the most political power. So, like, from the way I see it, it's like, are we providing the right incentives? Now, to be clear, I've been really heartened to see a lot of these demonstrations in Israel, protesting the lack of action, bringing hostages home, and kind of pushing Netanyahu towards the exit. And I think that's good. But I look at the public polling in Israel, and it's frankly quite disturbing for me. So I think rather than, say Israel's evil, they're a Zionist project. And yeah, by the way, I'm a Zionist in the sense I think Israel should exist and I want a home for the Jews. I think that's a word that's been really polluted. But instead of like this moralistic language, I am so much more interested in like, how can we functionally get to the end of this war? And, I think the United States has a part to play, and I think we're doing that very well. I think Israel, give them a B-, maybe a C+. But then I look at Hamas, and I don't know if you saw on my Twitter the Wall Street Journal piece on them rejecting the ceasefire. It's some 20 out of 10 cynical shit that Hamas is doing. Like, they had a deal on the table. It was excellent. They came to this conclusion that it was going to be better for them to inflame hate towards Israel all around the world by keeping fighting going during Ramadan. And they just walked away from this, from the entire peace settlement, right? Ceasefire settlement. And in the meantime, like, you look at the level of starvation that's happening to the 1.4 million civilians that are trapped in Rafah. It is terrifying. And Hamas is just serving those people up for breakfast. I urge you, go to my Twitter and look at the chart about the different ranks of food insecurity officially. I think it's like 42% of people there are on the edge of starving right now. Yeah. And Hamas does not give a damn. And I keep asking myself, like, where's the fire for the major variable in keeping this conflict going? It's truly baffling to me.
You're asking where is all the pushback against Hamas?
Yeah, I don't see it.
It,
No.
it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist because, and I would say it because of how Israel has responded. Israel was being supported by everybody except, dumb fuck leftists that are dumb fuck leftists, right?
Yeah.
And then they started their bombing campaign. And then they had 𝕵𝖎𝖎𝖙 go on TV, and they had their finance minister go on TV. And then Bibi Netanyahu went on TV, and they're like, we're going to do this. We're not going to stop until all the hostages are back. We're going to bomb them. We're going to take it over. We're not going to let Hamas exist. Not letting Hamas exist is fine. I'm not saying that's part of the problem.
Sure.
But all that stuff happened. And all of the goodwill that people kind of 2 steps away from left of center dissipated. And who is participating online? It's not moderates. Moderates aren't involved in these political discussions. Or we're an anomaly here, right? We don't get people fired up. What happens is that the extremes on both ends are what get people fired up. And sad to say it is, there's a lot of anti-Semitism on the left, and there's a whole lot of it on the right, and they're all pushing for the same narrative.
So you said something there that I don't know if it's true, and I want to push back on it a little bit. You said that right after October 7th, most of the international community supported Israel. That is
maybe most of the. I said left. I didn't say.
Okay.
I wasn't talking about governments.
Okay, if you want to clarify, that's fine. Because I remember the UN making a resolution to condemn the October 7th attacks and didn't pass.
Yeah. So
right?
so the UN's got to. Yeah. So I don't care about the UN.
Okay. So
really
if you're
don't.
talking about something different than the international community, then okay. But I'm talking about the international community.
I was talking about people within like the U.S. online, like our political bubble, not globally.
With the U.S.
globally,
online,
the whole issue with globally, there's a whole issue with anti-Semitism broadly. So,
if we want to bring this to just support for Israel in the U.S. online, I think broadly amongst the non-extreme branches, there's still a large swath of support for Israel in this time. I think it's gone down, but not like significantly. I think at least that's the impression I get. I don't have. I
think there's a lot more. There's a lot more liberals and rank and file Democrats. I'm talking about the people that make up the Democratic Party, the people that are volunteers, the people that are on the front line of getting people to the polls. We're talking precinct chairs. We're talking about all the people that volunteer under the precinct chairs. Any of Democratic clubs. There's been a lot less support for Israel among those people, especially in the Northeast, and especially in places like Minnesota and Michigan and California. There's been a lot less there among those people. Maybe not the Northeast. I should probably clarify
I mean, Michigan, like California ain't the Northeast, but yeah.
No, I said I was labeling a lot of different places.
No, that's all good.
Minnesota,
I was just okay, fair enough.
Wick, can I ask a quick question? This was a statement that was made, and I don't want to go past it. Cipher has the assessment that the reason Hamas is not entering more of the calculation in who we are apportioning blame to is because Israel's bombing campaign has turned people against Israel. Do you agree with that assessment? What is kind of your take on that?
I don't. I think that at least, again, I don't have a poll up right now, but the people that I have talked to in real life, right, the speeches I have heard, outside of the people who were condemning this day one, right, like who were calling for a ceasefire on October 7th, and there were a lot of people doing that. Outside of that cohort, people don't like it. They're not happy with it. But they don't condemn Israel for it. They understand it. They're hoping for peace. They hope for a quick conclusion to the war. But they are, in general, for the most part, like, do what you gotta do, Israel, right? That's at least the effect that I'm seeing.
Yeah, I agree.
We're having a bit of just slightly miscommunication. So online, the people that are online are not those people generally. People that are actively engaged in like protesting and that's what I'm saying. So when you're not seeing it online, though, right?
No, it's talking real life.
Those people don't. Yeah, I know, but I said we're talking about online somewhat in real life. So that's what I'm saying. We're slightly slightly talking past each other.
Okay, that's fine.
So rank and file Democrats, there's been a lot less support, but they're not like saying Israel has to do a ceasefire now necessarily. But they are condemning it more. So at least in my community here in Texas.
Again,
there's
without like this is all
there's a lot more
vibes based. I
condemning.
don't have anything to say yes or no.
Yeah.
I just don't.
Well, I mean, how engaged are you locally with your Democratic Party?
Well, not very, because I live in a very rural section of Pennsylvania that doesn't exist here.
Sure.
To be clear,
Okay.
but I am again. I work with Progressive Victory. I work with other like online communities and things like that. And again, like there is a sizable cohort who are anti-Israel, but they were always, and that hasn't grown. So
I don't know.
I personally, I have an assessment that before October 7th, I think I radically underestimated the way the anti-Semitism has shaped history and has shaped this region particularly, it even shaped American politics. I mean, I was aware of it, but just Cipher, to be ultra clear, I'm not accusing you of this. You've been lovely, and I've really appreciated the nuance that you've talked to with all of this. But I've been really stunned by seeing how quickly people are turning on Israel and making a really blanket statement about Jews, right? Yeah, to be clear, I don't think all of that is like anti-Semitism. I think it's entirely possible, especially given the overreaction, the military response, to have a problem with Israel's government. I share that problem. But I think the answer to that question, like why isn't Hamas getting more heat? I think it's kind of simple, actually. A lot of people hate Jews, and a lot of people don't want Israel to exist. When you say Zionism like it's a slur, I don't know. It feels so Orwellian for me, because I don't know what word you can use anymore to just say Jews deserve a homeland, right? Like that word has been erased, right?
Do you want me to try to bridge the gap on Zionism here?
Sure.
Okay. So, Brianna, I would assume that you don't support white nationalism. Okay.
No.
Right? You don't, right? All right. So, among right-wing Zionists, both Christian and Jewish people in Israel, there is a cohort of them that want that to be what Israel represents.
Yeah.
It is equivalent of white nationalism in Israel. All right. And that is a fundamental core part of the Zionist zeitgeist, because it was established during the time period where everybody was trying to create ethnic national states.
Sure.
They were all trying to follow the German model of creating a people for a land for a people, getting everybody on board and around an ethnic group, right? So if you're a leftist, you are going to be against that. It doesn't matter what kind of leftist you are. If you're a leftist libertarian, if you're a leftist lefty, if you're a leftist Marxist, you're going to be against the kind of idea of creating an ethnic homeland, unless you're a separatist kind of leftist person, in which case you're fine with it.
Unless it's a Palestinian homeland or an Arabic homeland or African
because
homeland.
No.
Because
See, this is no. I'm not letting you do this. No. I will cut you off in this one. No, they're not. They are not explicitly designed to promote and benefit most of these countries, to promote and benefit a particular ethnic group, which is what Zionism does. All right. Now we can say that there is some of this within Arab countries with Muslim and Sunni majorities. We can say that the Pashtuns within Afghanistan and the Taliban are explicitly trying to set up a Pashtun explicitly ethnic supremacy thing. We can say that those things exist. We can say that China had partly done that with Han Chinese, right? The United States tried to do it with white people up until 1920, basically. All right. These are things that everybody is against, right? Most people are against, unless they're ethnic separatists.
Yeah.
Unless they're ethnic separatists, and I don't share things with them, right?
Sure. And when
so
I
with
say,
me,
'cause this is a, if I may, this is the frustration of the conversation, is I will say, hey, this thing is happening amongst this cohort, right? There's a cohort among leftists who absolutely will stand the Han Chinese, like they have no problem with what happened to the Uyghurs, right?
Yep.
They will excuse it left,
yeah,
right, and
those
center.
people
They will
suck.
excuse, yeah, but you can't say that it's not happening and leftists don't believe it when there's
I don't
not a
consider those
majority,
people to be
but a
leftist.
sizable minority of people calling themselves leftists.
Yeah,
who
I know, and they're
this is what
liars.
they believe in. You can say that they're a liar, right? But this is when people think leftist, these people also come to mind, right?
And I would reject that framing, but I understand it, which is why I said the majority of leftists do not appreciate these things. I have no, so I'm sure you two remember the Professor Flowers debate with Vosh, right?
Oh my God.
Back in the day,
All right.
yes.
So yes, she is an ethnic she wants to establish an ethnic space for black people in the United States. I reject that because ethnic majority supremacist systems always bend towards
But they
tyranny.
would call you a white supremacist for rejecting
And
it,
they can
right?
go
They would
fuck
call
themselves.
They would
okay?
call you a Zionist. To tie
Yes,
this
they
back,
probably
they would call you
they
a
wouldn't call me a
Zionist.
Zionist.
Well, they would use words like that because it's all connected, right? If you're one, you're all
Yeah.
of them, right?
Yeah.
Amongst that kind of belief
mean,
system. Now, I understand
sure,
that
they're
you're not
stupid.
saying this, but the frustration is there are plenty, and you say that a majority don't, maybe, right? But on October 7th, a lot of people who I didn't think would side with Hamas kind of sided with Hamas, right? And
Yeah,
and
because
it
they did the
shocked
whole
me.
yeah.
But like my point here is into the Zionism, right? Like, when we talk about Zionism, I've seen people use that as cover to just attack.
Oh yeah,
Jews,
yeah, yeah.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
it's
That is
frustrating.
the problem with this conversation in general. Is there's a lot of racists hiding behind terms. You see it among white people, you see it among black people, you see it among Jews, you see it in this debate. Like there's always this, like, you're a dumb white male. Like that is the kind of crap we're talking about, right? But
I do want to
that is the
say,
core problem.
and I hear you on that, and I think there is a good faith interpretation of that. I also I think a lot of younger people are getting radicalized into being like anti-Zionist because, like, you know, they see this war going on and the pictures are heartbreaking. I mean, I remember, God, just today I was looking at a story about what's happening in Rafah, and it's hard to see like pictures of children starving like that and not have it really affect you, right? So I think there is, I think I'm probably not the only person that was not paying as close attention to this before October 7th. And I think there are a lot of people that have not done the deep dives on the history that all three of
No,
us have.
I haven't.
And they see it as like oppression, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and I think that's the beginning and end of it to them. But I just, you know, it's so hard, and this is what I think is so hard about this subject is it takes so much time and so much patience and frankly so much maturity to sit down and first of all go, hold on, I don't know enough about that to have an opinion about this. Let me go read about this. Now let me read something that someone who thinks something opposite believes about this so I can make sure that the way I feel about it is correct. So then you go and you like read about the thousands of years of Jewish exile and, you know, like what happened when, you know, the Jews were kicked out of Judea, you know, the entire history of this region, right? It's a much harder conversation to understand like 2 millennia of history and why Jews are treated the way that they are and like what happened after the Holocaust to make everybody like want a homeland where they would be free from repression. Like that's why I am a Zionist. I think Jews deserve a home to be safe. And I think that term has been like polluted by frankly all this online discourse and some very legitimate criticism, which I think you just enumerated very well.
Yeah, the pollution of the term Zionist has also been done by right-wing Israelis.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, like, we have to point that out.
Yeah, you're right.
Or people like Rabbi Shmuley. Like, look at this nut job that's on Piers Morgan all the time. Everything is anti-Semitism. Everything is blood libel. And it's like, dude, you gotta pull that card out when it matters. Like,
Yeah.
there's real stuff there. It's exactly like the people on Twitter that call everyone a Nazi that they disagree with. It cheapens the term. So when there's a real problem, you don't have a word to even reach for it anymore.
And I think that the reason why people can hide behind being an anti-Zionist, but also just be anti-Jew, is because of that conflation to a degree.
Yeah.
And so they're like, well, they're going to call me an anti-Jew anyways. Why don't I just say Zionist and just like hide my power level?
It's funny because
and that's what some people are doing.
I've seen clips of them catching themselves too. They'll be like, that guy and her Zionist husband, right?
Yep.
Like, and you'll see it in real time, and you're like,
yep.
It's funny
because it's okay
but
to say
you're right.
it's okay to be an anti-Zionist.
But I just want to point out that you were right, that just as some people use Zionism as a shield, some people use anti-Semitism as a shield, and will say, "Oh, you're just being anti-Semitic to me." When no, motherfucker, you've done some horrendous shit that we need to call out. It's not because you're Jewish, right? It's because what you're doing is wrong. And I think that again, I appreciate you again. I wish I'd had more time to prepare for this conversation because it's a worthwhile conversation. But I think that there needs to be more discussion. Are either of you familiar? I did a segment on this earlier in the week. The Guernica situation. Did either of you hear about this?
Oh,
yeah, you shared that.
Oh my god.
Yes.
Wait, the painting?
Not the painting. The Guernica magazine. It's named after the painting. Yeah,
I apologize.
no, it's fine.
Yeah.
There's a famous, as you know, painting, the Picasso anti-war painting. It's a Guernica. But there was an anti-war magazine that was written, and it's pretty popular. I don't know how popular it is, but I would check it from time to time. They have a lot of different voices from this conflict, from Palestinian voices, Palestinian poets, and things like that. They published an essay by Joanna Chen, who is an Israeli interpreter, right? Never served in the IDF, would drive Palestinian children to the hospital, right, when they needed care, to help get them care. Donated blood to Gaza back in 2014. Pretty anti-war herself. When they published this piece, half their team resigned in protest because they said it was Zionist 𝕵𝖎𝖎, right? That it was apologizing for genocide. And I went and I found the article, even though Guernica retracted it. Guernica apologized and retracted it. And so I was very curious, what did this article have to say? So I read the article. The article was the most anodyne, just talking about her experiences after October 7th, right? And how scared everyone was and how it affected them. There was no genocide 𝕵𝖎𝖎. There was no Zionism in there. And the fact that everyone basically threw a fit and got her canceled and got Guernica to retract this article is, we are never going to get peace if we continue to do things like that, right? If we continue to engage in that kind of thing. Do you guys mind if I read some super chats? People are super chatting at me. I want to make a little money.
That's fine.
But so when we talk about like people being unwilling to hear other people's sides, and this is why I'm bringing this up, right? Too many of these conversations, we refuse to hear the other person. We just, oh, you're just a Zionist shill. Oh, you're just a Hamas supporter, right? And it's just not true for the vast majority of the conversations, right? We just coming at these from different places. We're valuing different things, and we have different sets of facts, but we're trying to kind of do the best we can. So I just wanted to commend you on that. Let me read some of these super chats.
And if you don't mind, after you're done reading the super chats, I want to comment on the article.
Please.
Well, Fairchild, thank you for the 5 gifted WhickTV memberships. That's always a pleasure. Origin of Logos for $5. What's going on? Losers on Twitter bitching about nothing. I mean, yes, but we're talking about other things right now. $10 from Origin of Logos. Instead of acknowledging that many leftists are insane and want Palestinians to wipe out Jews in Israel, people like Cipher will always fall back on the no true Scotsman fallacy. Thank you for the $10. Oh, okay. Now you can comment. Go ahead.
Like he should be able to respond to that.
If he wants.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't say this is no true Scotsman thing, because the reason why I reject them as being leftist is because leftism is in general rooted in some form of liberalism that is anti-authoritarian. And you cannot be anti-authoritarian and support a ethnic supremacist system. That's why I don't consider them that. Now I saw Wick being like, "What you're talking about?" Like, yeah, I get it. The Soviets can be considered leftist economically. They're not on the up down. They're authoritarian. Just like
I think that like leftism to me, and this may just be a definitional thing. I don't want to be pedantic, but when I say leftism, I include the authoritarians and the libertarian left in the same.
I don't. Because I don't think you can be. I think you can't. You fundamentally cannot be, even for economic betterment, and still have these hierarchical kind of ideas that are promulgating your government. And I think they end up collapsing on themselves. So that's why the Soviet Union ended up like when the Soviet Union did communism and then also did ethnic nationalism and Russian supremacy all across its entire empire. Seeded Ukraine with ethnic Russians, seeded all these other places with ethnic Russians. It ended up collapsing in on itself and becoming more and more authoritarian as it went on, and less economically egalitarian. I think that it ends up destroying itself. That's why I don't do it. Now, this is very nuanced. This is like a me thing. I understand that this is a me personal thing, so I don't begrudge people for saying that. So that's what it's on there.
You wanted to comment on the magazine. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. As far as the article, so I read the article as soon as you posted it up, Wick. We had a little conversation about it in your server. And I think part of that is the misreading that I had. I think they also had it. I think that was part of it. But at the same time, within leftist circles, you can't support what Israel's doing now. And if you post anything that is going to be even vaguely be like, "Hey, their response kind of makes sense," you're gonna get pushback.
Really?
That's probably more of it.
Really?
Yeah, so.
Is that true? I have not experienced that at all.
So I think that's what happened. And I had not known until I read the other articles about that article that this was a purely voluntary editorial staff and that sort of thing. Those people's reputation among the people that they actually care about are going to look at them as pariahs if they don't try to do something.
That's the problem.
It is bad.
Though.
It is the problem. I'm not saying that it's good. I'm explaining kind of what happened. That's it. So this is all bad. This is the article. So anybody that's watching this,
right? Like if we read this on my stream, right, to be clear. Right?
Yeah. Okay. So hopefully all your audience knows about it. So I'm not justifying it all. This is an explanation. I think that they shouldn't have retracted it. I think they should have stood their ground. But I understand why they retracted it. I understand why the people resigned. I understand all of it. It's a shitty situation.
Excellent. All right. I think I'm all talked out. I feel good. How about y'all?
Sounds good to me. Look, I'm just here going with the flow. I'm pretending I'm discount counterpoints for the day. Okay. I'm making sure, right?
You're counter my heart.
Oh, that's so sweet. That's so sweet.
Yeah.
Before I jump off, I just want to say, Cipher, I like you a lot as a person, and thanks for taking the time to do this. Sure. I know we have different opinions on this, but I don't know. It's like my heart grows 3 sizes every time I can talk to someone and have a productive conversation. So genuinely, thanks for coming by. It means the world.
I appreciate that. And I say the same. Like you came at this in good faith. We had disagreements. I think you understand where my disagreements are coming from as much as I understand yours. So I think this was productive. More of this on Twitch, please.
Please. Just before both of you leave, 2 things. Tomorrow we're gonna have a call-in show. So if you have problems with anything I've said or anything I've said in the past, and you want to call in, more than happy. Monday is what I want to talk about, though, right? And Woo's here. Brianna's here, so we can talk about it a little together.
You call me Woo. I don't care.
It's a habit in the military. Everyone was last names to me, and it's just a habit I've stuck with. We are going to be talking about the recent TikTok ban that passed the House, and not only are we going to have Brianna on there to talk about it, we're going to have Christina Warren, I believe is her name.
Yes.
Film girl from YouTube. We are also going to have Prime Kai on, and if we can bully him into it, because he's interested, if we can bully him into it, we're going to get No Opinion on as well. So that should be a fun discussion. I hope we can. Monday we are going to have it, and because it's a fraught conversation. I'm going to be real with you guys. I'm torn on this. I'm torn on the
Yeah.
TikTok ban. I go back and
Yeah.
forth. My current ways of thinking is good, right? Especially since I saw all those youth talking about how they learned more from TikTok than they did from school. I was like, nope, never mind, ban it. But yeah, it's a thing. Anything you either one of you want to say before we
I've got a plug. So the show on Monday, my friend Christina. Okay, like, look, she's one of my very best friends on earth. Christina is 20 out of 10 gorgeous. She is literally the public face of Microsoft. She has so much experience as a journalist. She has interviewed Tim Cook. Now she's a developer. So if you use like Azure or something like that, Christina is literally the person out there, like working at the company, like helping advocate for you as a developer. She is so cool and amazing, and I'm so glad I could get her on your show, Wick. So I hope everybody in Twitch, Paul, will give Christina a warm welcome, because she would be a great addition to this space.
I'm excited. I wasn't familiar with her before, but I looked some up. $50 from Principles Before Politics. Before we go, YouTube isn't a real platform, and I'm offended that I'm over here instead of Twitch, but this has been a fantastic conversation. Glad it happened, and agree with all three of you in different ways and disagree in others. Perfect sane centrism, says me. Thank you for the $50. Gang, we're going to raid out. Are you still streaming, Cipher? Are you streaming at all? Like,
I don't stream anymore, and I just got one thing I want to say,
go ahead.
but real quick. So this is kind of a compendium conversation that I had previously. I had a conversation with Quibbles Over Coffee about this very subject. We didn't get into this what would be better as far as solutions too much, but we did talk a lot about the history. So if you want to see that from two people with different perspectives, one that's very much a well, never mind. So if you want to see it from two different perspectives on that, then yeah, go over to my channel and check it out. It's Best of All Possible Worlds, Israel-Palestine ?
Check it out, gang. Thanks again, and I want you to all raid out. We're gonna raid out. And wait, bye, everyone. Bye. Oh God, I really need to change the settings so it does it instantly and we don't have to wait. But we are gone.
Thank you